All right. We are live. We are in the building.
Once again,
Yeah,
one more
yeah.
again.
So, what's going on, party people? The place to be. I go by the name of the BK Apologist, transmitting live. New York is the city. Brooklyn be the borough. What's good? What's popping? We're continuing our deep dive analysis of the debate of the year between Dr. Vince Bantu and Jabari Osaze. And of course, I have my co-host, the second half of the EPMD of Urban Apologetics. One wrecks, the other destroys. You know what I mean?
All right, all
My
right.
man, Adam Coleman. What's good, bro?
What's going on, bro? Scott Lane, the Black Bruce Wayne, aka the real Adam Coleman. What's happening with you? Now, I don't know if I want to be the second half, man. I don't know if I want to be the second half, bro. I'm really feeling some kind of way about that. I'm trying to inch up to the first to
I
be
mean, you're
that first
freezing
half,
up.
man.
You're
Oh, okay. Can you hear me? Okay. I can see you. Well, actually, you were freezing up. I can see myself.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I don't know if it was me freezing up or
That's not good. Um,
is it still
MJ Jackson's in the building. What's up? Yeah, let me try something real quick here. Let me see if I can. I might disconnect.
okay? I mean, I can see you, but
All right. So, all right. So we are continuing in our deep dive analysis. Beatrice is on the check-in. What up, sis? What's going on?
hey, what's going on? What's going
You
on?
know. So what's your take, man? What's your take on the just doing this? 3 rounds in right now. Like how you feeling about? What's been the response? Have you got any feedback? I mean, what's going on?
Yeah, I have, man. I was told today that we're like the gold standard of of
Wow,
the debate review. I don't know about all that, man. I think they got
wow.
to, but I think the point was we've been doing a good job. You know what I'm saying? And I think people are digging it. And I think people are really just gaining from the experience, like we wanted them to. We wanted this to be more than just two dudes, sitting around talking, but just really kind of opening things up so that people could, learn from it. I've learned from it. This debate has caused me to go back and look some things up and
Yeah,
really
definitely, definitely.
grow myself. So, I've definitely been enjoying it, man, and it's just been cool kicking it, man. Like, honestly, I'm kind of feeling I'm feeling some kind of way, man. We coming down to the third round. We got tonight. We got the question part. We're gonna do another separate section on that. Man,
Yep.
we gotta find a way to keep this going, though, bro. You know what I'm saying? We gotta make this like a thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, this can't be the last time we team up. Absolutely not, man. This is too much
Right.
fun. Definitely too
Definitely.
much fun.
So
So yeah,
actually, while I'm thinking about it, last time, we were just rolling, man. I think we went for like 2.5 hours. You know what I'm saying? And we still had a little bit more to go in terms
yeah,
of combing through
yeah.
Barry's comments. But I was thinking about it today because in the infamous question, that I asked during the Q&A, we were addressing. I was addressing his zeitgeist claims, and I thought
So
that might be a good opportunity. Once we get to that, we'll double back.
that might be a separate video on its own. Just your question might just be a show on its own because we
Maybe.
really need to nail down that particular claim. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Just
sure.
bury it once and for all about the
Yeah,
Jesus myth thing, like completely. Like let's just deal with it completely so that no
that's
one
amazing.
else could use it. You know what I mean?
Right,
Just
right, right,
bury
right.
that. So
Well, that might be interesting then. So maybe what we'll do is, well, I guess we can talk about it offline, but maybe we'll run through all the other questions and then end out, with that perhaps. That might actually that would be kind of dope. As a matter of fact, it would probably end up being around, Christmas time or whatever, for, folks who celebrate that. So it might be an interesting.
yeah, right. That'd be a good timing. Yeah,
Yeah. So actually, that's pretty dope. Get brainstorm, right here live.
right in front of everybody.
But yeah, exactly. Right.
That's great. That's
Everything
great.
behind the scenes, but yeah, man. So what about you, man? How you been feeling about the series?
I mean, it's great. I've learned a lot. I've because it's forced me to fact check. And by doing so, I've learned things. I never knew who Hypatia was until this debate. To be quite honest with you, So
well,
that's
I certainly didn't know everything that you brought up. I mean, I'd heard about Hypatia, from philosophical standpoint, just kind of studying that branch. But in terms of the
right.
depth that you brought, I certainly didn't know all that. It was a lot of bars.
Well,
So, yeah.
well, that makes two of us, and that's something now that I can add to my arsenal.
Right.
Because the more you research, the more you keep that in your utility belt, and you never know when you might have to bring that out again. So this has been a great teaching moment for me personally.
Yeah.
I've learned so much, and it's also being more consistent online. I've been behind the scenes for quite some time, and it's only now that people are starting to realize who I am and what I'm doing, and thanks to people like you dragging me out into the forefront. So now,
finally, bro. Finally.
Oh man,
it's been a long time coming, man. But you're right though, man. It's been good to see, because actually, even aside from our series, I'm saying, I've noticed you've been more active, saying getting the memes out there, getting more videos out, and resources, things like that. And so that, I think that's been dope. This has kind of been coming out for you as well. And actually, going back to your previous point, I actually want to say something about that too, because you talked about pretty much having to get a little sharper. I'm saying, like, you're fact checking and getting sharper, got more tools in the arsenal, I think is what you said.
Mm-hmm.
And what's funny about that, I was thinking, when you said that, that's kind of the story of the church when you think about it. You know what I'm saying? Like, so whether it be heretics within, purportedly within the church,
Mm-hmm.
whether I'm thinking about like somebody like Arius, or somebody might say like Pelagius or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, when you have these heretics within the church, who are bringing, something heterodox, something that's outside of, correct teaching of scripture, you have those who rise to the occasion, like Athanasius, you know what I'm saying, and bring the proper understanding, bring, what the scripture is articulating. Or if it be somebody outside the church, whether it be, I'm just my camera here a little bit, like I think it's Celsius, or any number of people, you know what I'm saying, who try to rise up from outside the church and bring us down or whatever. The history of the church is that people like maybe an Augustine or a Tertullian or Origen or somebody like that will rise to the occasion. Justin Martyr, rise to the occasion and refute whatever philosophical or what have arguments, whatever. So the story of the church has been, whether it be objections coming from within or from outside, then the church we step up to the plate. This is what we do. You know what I'm saying? This is what we do. And so what's funny to me is when you think about what's going on right now in our context with urban apologetics, I mean, it's new to us, but really it's we're not doing anything different than what the church has always done. You know what I'm saying? When cats want a buck, you know what I'm saying, and they want to try to cast down Christianity, the biblical worldview, more broadly, this is what the church does. We rise to the occasion. You know what I'm saying? So that's I think this, I feel like this is kind of just an extension of that. You know what I'm saying? Not trying to big us up, like, whatever.
Right. No, we're definitely standing on the shoulders of some amazing giants in the past.
Absolutely.
Right? So,
absolutely.
And hopefully we're doing some kind of justice to that lineage of apologetics. And of course, we also want to inspire others. That's also part of what we're trying to do. To give people the resources that we have and to pass it on and not be stingy, right, with what we know, but to pass it on to other people so that they could do likewise. So
absolutely.
that the church just worldwide can be equipped to have a great answer for when someone asks for the hope that you have, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
So with that being said, I guess we should just get into it. So we're gonna focus on what? We're focused on Jabari's, or
I'm ready to go the whole round. You know what I'm saying? If you want to, I mean,
the whole round. Wow.
I mean,
all right, let's see what happens.
All right, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. We ain't gonna rush it.
So someone just asked us, can you guys address the planning of the event? I've seen someone posting online about this was supposed to be a 3-on-3 or something. Well, that would be for Mr. Coleman to answer. He knows more about it than I would.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think of what I can or what I can't say. And by that I mean, some things I'm just not. I can't put other people's business out there. Right. Quite frankly, what I mean. Let me just say this, because I recognize there's been some controversy about what the debate was initially supposed to be and how it turned out. I mean, to be completely honest, it just really came down to a matter of logistics. I'm saying costs, bringing people in, a whole host of those things, like just kind of nuts and bolts. Like, I mean, I guess for whatever reason, our community, the urban, whatever community, conscious community rather, what I'm saying, is, prone to conspiracies. I mean, it's just for whatever reason. But I mean, honestly, that just wasn't the case here. I mean, I've heard stupid stuff. Like I heard some, I think it was a Hebrew Israelite posted that Jabari got paid 20 grand or something stupid like that and cut other people out. I mean, that's just dumb. I mean, that's not true.
Where's my cut, bro? What's going on?
Like, I mean,
I need some of that.
I mean, there's all kind of bad information out there, but what I am at liberty to say is that, quite frankly, initially it was supposed to be a team debate. That was the idea that was thrown out there due to just some logistical complications with things like cost and, bringing folks in and promotions and things like that. It was just simpler to do a one-on-one debate. It's easier to do a one-on-one debate where you have somebody drive to a location and fly one other dude in and then have 6 people on the stage, you know what I'm saying, that have to be accounted for. It's just less cats to herd, you know what I'm saying? So it's just really that simple, you know what I'm saying? And I don't mean to be like flippant. I mean, with the person who asked the question, I mean, I don't think that they have any ill intent about it, but it's just one of those things. It's for whatever reason, it's been floating around, particularly among some individuals in the conscious community. There being some controversy there, and really it's just simple. I mean, it's this event that was planned and it was pulled off in a simpler way than was initially planned. It's really, it's honestly that simple. You know what I'm saying? So, I guess, and I guess it's really all that can be said about it right at this point.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, this was a debate a long time coming. There was different iterations, definitely. You know what I mean? So this is what panned out at the end. I think it was actually good. It was 2 people that really represented the communities to the best of their ability. Mm-hmm. I think it worked out for the best in this manner. So.
Yeah, and among other considerations, I mean, one thing I can share is that, and this is, I think, an important point to make, is that everybody in the conscious community doesn't think the same way.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, they're not monolithic, just like we aren't. You're right. So imagine, because initially, one of the ideas being thrown around is that you were going to have possibly even some Hebrew Israelites on the stage. You know what I'm saying? Initially, at that point, that idea was thrown around, but that doesn't make a lot of sense because they don't necessarily agree with comedics on
not at all,
or even amongst comedics. There's a lot of things they don't agree with. Right. So imagine how it would muddy the waters if you got a team of folks. You know what I'm saying? And they're stepping on each other's toes, and a number of different things. I mean, like it just could have got real messy.
MJ Jackson's being messy right now.
Oh, is he really?
MJ has been messy.
Oh, yeah, I see. It's put up on my screen yet, but
oh man.
Oh.
He's being real messy right now.
Well, I'm just saying. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just one of those things, man. I mean, I think a lot of people are just making stuff out of it that just it don't even need to be all that, man. You know what I'm saying? But
right.
Yeah.
But listen, man, I think we killed enough time to get some people in here. I think we need to give the people what they want. They want the deep dive. They want the hot takes.
Right.
They want them Adam Coleman bars. You know what I mean? So I guess we start from the beginning and then we'll just pause it from time to time to do what we do.
Yeah, we can do that. Let me just say too, to Michael Perkins. Yeah, I didn't take your question any kind of way. I didn't think you meant it some sort of sideways kind of way, and I'm aware of the videos that you're talking about, so it's all good. It's not even nothing like that. So
yes, sir.
Let me see, make sure I got the So I got the video, and probably would help if I shared it.
That would be good. That would be good.
Good. All right. Cool. All right. Is it showing? Okay.
Okay, hold on. I think I gotta do it. Hold on.
Yeah.
All right, here we are.
Okay, so let me see if I can. Darn it.
You're forgiven, MJ. The funny guy over there.
It's hilarious, yo. All right, cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and start it, and I guess you just let me know when you want to stop it, or
Sure.
All right.
We'll do.
All right.
Who has the answer for Black America?
Let me back up here. Let me turn my volume all the way up. Make sure my volume is turned up. Yeah. Okay, here we go.
Who has the answer for Black America, the church or Kemet? Now, let me say something to you that is probably not great to say in a debate. The reality is that we have to figure out how to work together. This is not a situation where I'm going to say to you that unless you rock in Kemet, we're not going to move forward. That's not what I'm saying at all. I would not say that. And honestly, while we've had a spirited debate here, this is a brother that I can work with. That's a brother I can work with. This is a church that's doing important work. That doesn't mean that we are not going to have difficult discussions, pointed discussions, but we have to learn how to have pointed discussions and difficult discussions without becoming disunited. So I need to say that. I am not suggesting that you must be Kemet in order for our entire nation to move forward. I do believe, however, that the paradigm that we see in ancient Kemet and the actual behaviors that we see those practitioners and those teachers coming forth with are absolutely redeeming for our community in 2019 and beyond. And so I want you to start by just looking at some of our master teachers. These are folks, two of them who actually helped hewn Jabari into who Jabari is. You're seeing on the left, who is this? Dr. Ben. By the way, I'm not hearing those names on this side. Come on now. Come on now. In the middle, who we seeing? Sheikh Anta Diop. And then on the end, we're seeing Dr. John Henry Clark. These amazing Africans who are—
You can stop it there for a minute.
I was about to, yeah, okay. You beat me to it. I was about to go ahead and pause it anyway. But yeah, go ahead.
No, you
go
first.
ahead,
you first. Go ahead.
You know, I'm about to get on my MJ Jackson right quick. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you know what? I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I mean, you know, I feel like there's just certain things that need to be said. You know what I mean? And I'm not going to go in super hard on it, but he made a comment after mentioning Dr. Ben. He said, I'm not hearing these names being mentioned on that side. Okay, this probably because, you know, Dr. Bantu is a real historian. So he quotes reliable sources. Therefore, he's not going to quote Dr. Ben. And so he's not going to quote somebody who's going to give you a bunch of, you know, pages of different stuff with no citations.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? That's why somebody like Dr. Ben. I mean, the reality is this, man. Now, here's where it gets tough. I'm saying here's where it becomes an issue where emotions have to be set aside. Okay, because I understand, particularly in African traditions, the importance of respecting one's elders. I totally get it. I'm saying, and I can dig it. As a matter of fact, I want to say I don't, maybe they edited it out, but I think that Eric Mason did a fantastic job of doing that in this debate. As a matter of fact, you know what I'm saying? So I get it. I don't want to come into somebody else's house and disrespect somebody that they highly esteem necessarily. You know what I mean? But you know what? Look, I don't regard Dr. Ben as being a phenomenal scholar from whom I'm going to draw much of my information. I don't respect Dr. Henry Clark as being a phenomenal scholar from whom I'm going to draw a lot of my information. You know, Anthony Job, you know, I mean, I'll give him, you know, more credit than I would the other two. Right. You know what I'm saying? I'm just being real, but I mean, like he draws some conclusions from some things that I think are completely ahistorical, quite frankly. You know what I'm saying? Right. And none of these guys are infallible. To be fair, none of these guys are infallible. But I'm just being real. Like specifically, Dr. Ben and Dr. Clark. I'm sorry. If you give me pages upon pages upon pages with no citations, I'm sorry. I'm not going to quote you in a scholarly debate. Why would I do that?
Well, when it comes to Clark did cite people, and the issue is the people he cited. For example, when I share my screen.
Woo. All right.
All right. Do you see my screen?
It's a little small. Maybe you can expand it.
See it now?
Yeah, that's better. I can see it. Yeah.
All right. So this is from a response. The following is Professor Clark's response to Henry Louis Gates Jr.'s Black demagogues and pseudo scholars. Right. So Mr. Gate was going at Mr. Clark, and this is Clark's response. Most of the old and new Black scholars asking for a total reconsideration of African history in particular and world history in general are using neglected documents by radical white scholars who are generally neglected by the white academic community. In African history, I am referring to scholars like Gerald Massey and his work, Egypt, Light of the World, 2 volumes, The Book of the Beginnings, 2 volumes, and Natural Genesis, 2 volumes. I'm also referring to Gerald Massey's greatest English disciple, Albert Churchward, whose book, The Signs and Symbols of Primordial Man, asks for a reconsideration of the role of people outside of Europe and their role in human development. Yeah, that's why we don't quote him.
Right. I mean,
because look who he is quoting.
You're talking about a guy who claimed to have, I want to say, maybe not speak, but be able to read, the Egyptian text when the Rosetta Stone was barely discovered, like just before his lifetime, I want to say, or just before he would have been. The bottom line, I'm going to screw that up, but the bottom line is he made claims about being knowledgeable of the language that were just flat out not possible at that time. I'm saying, given that they hadn't decoded the Rosetta Stone enough to him to be able to make the claims that he was making. Right. So you're talking about a guy who, Gerald Massey is obviously trash. Right. and if you deal with a guy who's his chief disciple, you know what I mean? And I don't really have a whole lot of confidence in him either. He's looking suspect as well. You know what I mean? So,
but it also gives us insight in Jabari's scholarship as well, because he said that he sat at the feet of these gentlemen, and I'm sure there were a lot of things they did teach that were great, but a lot of their sources were suspect. To be honest with you, they really were.
Well, it's true, and it was interesting too. This brings up an interesting point, because I think one of I try not to make like over the top statements, but I think one of the top 5 problems in the conscious community, and actually I'm not even going to just put that in the conscious community. I'm just going to say in general. I think just in general discourse is that people have difficulty discerning between reliable sources and unreliable sources. You know what I'm saying? I think that's a big issue. If you believe that a guy who relies upon Gerald Massey for his conclusions, then what you're telling me is that you have difficulty discerning between reliable sources and unreliable sources. That's what you're saying. You know what I'm saying? Likewise, with Dr. Ben. And I'm not trying to disparage these guys. It's nothing personal.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But and then to be honest with you, in terms of, and I'll take it even further, okay? Because specifically people like Dr. Ben and Dr. Clark, I mean, they're not only making historical claims. You know what I'm saying? In terms of their speaking, they're drawing inferences from what they are proclaiming to be history, right, and making other claims as well in terms of what we ought to be or ought not to be doing. Spiritual traditions that we ought not to be following, and so on and so forth. And some, like, when people say things like Dr. Clark, one of his most famous, I'm thinking is one of his most famous phrases, with Christianity being the handmaiden of white supremacy. You know what I'm saying? Which is such an over embellishment. It's not even funny. I mean, it's just a grotesque lack of nuance. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't take into account, right, the vast, swaths of history that would go against that claim. You know what I'm saying? Like the fact that you have Christians and people, who oppose slavery and Jim Crow on the basis of their Christian convictions. You know what I'm saying? Those who were fighting court cases and using the biblical worldview as leverage, to fight for their freedom, who were enslaved persons. I mean, there's a number of different directions you can go, but when you make big statements like that, they just show just a huge lack of historical nuance, you know what I'm saying? Then those are the kind of things that give me like red flags and say, you know what, okay, this person is not employing critical thinking skills, when they come to these sorts of conclusions. You know what I'm saying? They're just being hasty, maybe emotional or whatever it may be. But again, that's just not a reliable source of information that, right, I'm going to draw my conclusions from.
Right.
You see what Man.
Right.
That's just what that is.
I agree. I'm having a little bit of an internet issue. Did he already speak about partnering up with the church? Did he get to that part yet? Did he say?
Yeah, he did mention. He said that this is a brother I can work with. You know, we don't have to, beef or whatever.
But did he actually say the partnering up yet? Did he say that part?
I want to say he did. Yeah, that was like in his beginning part.
Right,
we talked about like, yeah, go for it. Yeah.
So here's my question. Now, what is the title of this round?
Oh yeah, Christianity or Kemet. Who has the answers for the Black community? Right.
Right. Now, here's my question, Adam. Would you partner up with somebody who doesn't have any answers?
No, I would not.
Right. So what is he saying then?
Right.
Again, the round is what again?
Right. Yeah. Good point.
Right. So you don't partner someone unless you think they're doing something correct.
Yeah, and he actually said that. He said that the church, Epiphany Fellowship specifically, is doing great work in the community. He specifically said that. So there's something that we're bringing to the table, obviously, that he must find valuable, or usable, or whatever word we want to use, for sure. Yeah.
So I just wanted to bring that part, so we could continue.
That's a great point.
We continue with the video.
Okay. Let me see. Okay. Yeah. This is something I'm gonna get to in a minute.
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna play the video. Okay.
Actually fought for us to understand the full breadth of African history. It is difficult to understand how to move forward today if you don't understand what you did yesterday. Imagine if you woke up tomorrow morning and had no memory of the days, years before. What would you do? Where would you go? That is essentially what our oppressors would like us to do. They'd like us to be a people that began in enslavement. They'd like us to be a people that actually have not proven that we can rule the world in peace and prosperity. The peace comes first. And so I want you to look at these elders and understand they did important work. Two of them, Dr. Ben and Dr. Clark, were actually professors of mine at Cornell University. Amazing people. But I have to say that this elder is the one whose practice has allowed me to stand upright. When I have a problem and I'm not communicating, he calls me. Beloved, where are you? I have not heard from you. Are you okay? And his walk has been 50 years in the Kemetic tradition. So please understand that when we look at the Kemetic tradition.
Yeah, I'm gonna pause it right there, right quick. Just lest I be confused as somebody who's just looking to nitpick every day, all day. Yeah, I just want to point out, like everything that Jabari says, I don't disagree with. You know what I'm saying? His point about history being important, understanding of history. Yeah, I'm definitely down with it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, any rational person who's done any amount of objective study would agree that history, as is generally taught, at least for most of us, is done so poorly. I mean, we're not getting a robust picture of things that have gone on in the world.
Absolutely.
And there's fallout from that. You know what I'm saying? There's no doubt, that much of our history, particularly as African Americans, has been taught from the cotton field forward.
Right.
No doubt about that. You know what I'm saying? And even then, still poorly, because there's so many things that we haven't learned. You know what I'm saying? About our histories, even here in the West. So yeah, I definitely want to say I agree with him. I agree with him on that point. As a matter of fact, I interviewed Nefertiti on my channel last week, and she made a phenomenal point, just talking about the intentions behind those who are writing the history books. To some extent, is to instill some pride, within like American citizens, Europeans, whatever it may be. I mean, you want people to, like, most people are not going to, rehash history that they feel terrible about. Just human nature. We don't do that. You know what I'm saying? We want to highlight the good and kind of, maybe mention the bad, but, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on it. You know what I'm saying? So, and so that's what happens. And now in the process of doing that, unfortunately, we're on the wrong side of that equation, in terms of, how history played out over here, and so it doesn't have the same effect for minorities that it does for those for whom much of history is written. The history books are written. You see what I'm saying? That's just a fact of the matter.
Yes, sir.
So I can dig it. And then, props to him. As far as the give an example between him and Baba Haru. He mentions his elder as somebody who basically I interpret it as holds him accountable.
Yeah,
definitely can dig it. I'm saying, and I'm down with that. I think that as men, we need that, particularly in communities where fatherlessness is a problem. We need that. You know what I'm saying? So, I just want to kind of point that out because, I don't want it to be construed as just a hater or something like that.
Right.
When I see something I agree with, I want to make sure I point that out as well.
Absolutely. Good points. Good points.
All right. There we go.
Look at its resurgence, its renewal in the West. It hasn't actually been extremely long. We should not be judged on whether we are able to do things that the Christian church is able to do. Because, and you may be upset when I say that.
Right. So I just feel like he does a lot of acquiescing in this round. Instead of really trying to showcase, what Kemet has done or even able to do, there's a lot of acquiescence. Like, listen, you guys, you've been doing it for a minute, and we're trying to catch up, which is fair. I got no problem with that. And we shouldn't be the only people doing good in the world, right? If you feel like you could do some good, you should, but don't critique those who've been doing good longer than you. You know what I mean? So,
well, to be honest with you, I agree with you. I think you might be a little more gracious than I am with that point. Because I felt like it was a cop out. I felt like it was a cop out. Now the fact of the matter is, it is true, as far as I understand, that I think he's referring to in the context of African Americans, maybe England or something like that. Like the Western world more broadly. But of course, is the case. That Kemeticism hasn't been flourishing. As long as Christianity. Obviously, that's the case. Nevertheless, if you're an historian, I'm saying you've been looking at Christians from I would say African American Christians, African Christians in the West, however you want to put it. Christianity was balling from the time they was introduced to it. I'm saying, like, that's just a fact of the matter. You know what I'm saying? Like, now I'm not saying it's on the same scale that is now, but you can speak to something. Like, just because they haven't been around a long time doesn't mean you can't show and prove with what you have.
That's
what I
true.
mean? So it's like, come on, man.
Well, he does make an attempt right here.
He does make an attempt. It's coming up. I was like, I don't know if I'm really feeling that right there. Now, they're not really going to have the history that we have. I get that. But, man, shoot, we can go back to, the 1700s with Absalom Jones. We can go back to.
Oh, we're going to do a little bit of that, too. I got
something. All right, so I'm going to leave that. Alone for now. But, so, anyway, and to be fair, again, I get it. Let's say we were to go to day 5 after some enslaved person who hadn't heard about Christianity, maybe is introduced to it. I'm not saying that from that point, all of a sudden Christianity is balling out of control amongst the African community.
Right.
I'm not saying that, what I'm saying? But I'm just saying, bro, show and prove what you got, bro. Let that be that. Anyway, but like I said, maybe I need to take the more gracious route. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna take the Alfredo Valens route. I think I'm about to actually stop it again because there's something he says coming up here that I may actually stop it right after that. But let's
okay.
But it is true. Christianity was given to us in the entire time we've been here. So that in some ways, even those wonderful conscious Africans who were Christian had a head start in trying to do things in our community. So I'm not trying to match Christianity, the church. I want to be able to make a.
Yeah, so I want to say something here. Now he's talking about the length of time that Christianity has been in our community. He makes a comment that it was given to us,
right?
And previously in the debate, he used that in a more disparaging way than I think what he said right here. But I don't think I addressed it earlier, so I just wanted to just kind of address this point. because it's an issue that constantly comes up. You know what I'm saying? I want to say it was in round one. Jabari makes a more explicit statement about this notion of Christianity having been given to us as being, problematic in some sort of way. At least that's the point that he was trying to make. So if I could just share my screen right quick, I just want to address this because it comes.
You're sharing now. You're sharing now. Yeah.
Well, actually, I want to share. Let me see how I could do this. I want to share. I'm gonna have to stop this screen and then bring up my PowerPoint real quick.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Because this is just a common claim that I want to address.
Cool. While you're doing that, the new is on the check-in. What's going on, sis?
What up with it?
Please share the video wherever you can. People definitely need to see this.
Definitely.
Well, see Adam, maybe not so much me, but
Nah, man. It's tag team, bro. Tag team back again.
Nah, you stupid.
we went from EPMD to tag team, bro. We falling backward, man.
Basically. Yeah, it's not good. It's not good.
So is it sharing my screen or no?
Oh, wait a minute. My bad. Yeah, let me
real quick. Kind of, and this is just kind of illustrates how I'm trying to make my screen bigger here. When you say something fallacious, it comes back to bite you. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
This is why you don't want to make fallacious statements, because it's kind of like acid in a debate or in some sort of dialogue, right? I'm gonna get to it in a second, but what happens is, once you make a fallacious statement, if somebody else who picks up on it holds you to it, then it begins to eat through the arguments that you're trying to make, on your own behalf. All right. So, this idea that Christianity needs to be discarded or rejected on the basis of, this idea that it was given to us is actually a form of, I'll say a form of the genetic fallacy. You know what I'm saying? Can y'all see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, cool. So let me just, run through this real quick. I don't have to take a whole lot of time. So the genetic fallacy, simple way to put it is that, when you have a claim that's, that's accepted as true or false based on the origin of the claim. Okay. So instead of looking at the actual merits of the claim, it is judged based on its origin. That's kind of like a functional definition that we can, tie to the genetic fallacy. Now, the biblical worldview is a set of claims. Like, we're not just, we're saying that the world is a certain way. I'm saying the reality itself is a certain way. It is the case that God exists. In real time, Jesus, walked the earth, died on the cross, resurrected. We're making claims about things that are the case in the world, have happened, will happen, and so forth, right? So, when people say things like, "Oh, well, we need to just reject it because your ancestors were beaten to Christianity, or it was given to us," and that whole field, they're basically committing the genetic fallacy. That's what they're doing. They're rejecting the biblical worldview, that set of claims, right, about how the world is on the basis of how our African ancestors in the West supposedly came to believe it, right? Now, I could go on a whole different argument about how historically thin that sort of notion is, and actually I deal with that on my show. If people want to check it out, True ID Podcast, I think it's called The Bigger Picture. I think is the name of that episode, part 1 and 2. But nevertheless, I'm just dealing with the fallacious nature of that statement right now. Mm-hmm. Now, here's the thing. If you take that position, right, and I'm going to use Jabari as an example because he's going to make some claims here in a minute. So if you take the position that Christianity, that a reason to reject Christianity is this notion that it was given to us, right, from your oppressor or from this or from that. You know what I'm saying? If that's going to be a basis for which, you reject Christianity, then you're going to have to reject some other things too, right? Now let's get into it. Okay, keep that same energy. Right? So capitalism was also given to us, right? Now, in a minute, Jabari is going to want to make some claims about how we can, do better economically, whether in terms of business, ownership, entrepreneurship, business dealings. He's going to talk about buying power in the African community. He's going to talk about all these different things, right? You say, well, capitalism is something that was given to us, right? Now, if we are to reject Christianity on the basis that it was given to us, then you ought to reject capitalism, right? But if you reject capitalism, then I can't imagine that you're going to be all that successful operating in a capitalistic system. You know what I'm saying? You're gonna have to engage in a capitalistic system to do anything economically, you know what I'm saying, that would benefit our people. But if you have to reject all that, then the position that you have to take then is not going to be helpful to our people thriving in this current system. And so in answering the question, who has a better answer, for who has the answers for our community, the position that you're articulating already makes it difficult, if not impossible, to engage the economic system that we find ourselves in, because you got to reject it. You got to, cast it aside, given that it was given to us. Secondly, democracy, the political, the overarching political system or framework that we operate in. Kemet wasn't a democracy.
Nope.
As I put here, it was an attempted theocratic monarchy. You know what I'm saying? That, it was this idea that the pharaoh was, if not God, in the flesh in some sort of, if not God, was a conduit or a doorway between
the
God,
son of Ra. He was a son of Ra.
There we go. He was the son of Ra, right? And he was, they do have this concept of Ma'at, by which all things are supposed to be run by Ma'at, and that's kind of how they are operated, whatever. Nevertheless, it wasn't a democracy. You don't see people, voting on this in the same way that we've got like this, the three branches of government and this distribution of power and all that kind of stuff. You don't see that in Kemet, ancient Kemet, right? Okay, so he's going to have to reject democracy because democracy was given to us. I'm saying by the oppressors, by the white man. Now, if you're going to reject capitalism, that's going to make it difficult for you to engage in the economic system, which, then we can't advance economically. If you're going to reject democracy, given the fact that it's, been given to us, now we can't really successfully engage in the political system. You know what I'm saying? So on both counts, you're articulating a position. And again, we're supposed to be, trying to figure out what's best for our community, right? How are we going to thrive? And in the way that he's approaching that question, he's dealing with how we're supposed to, get by and thrive in this world, in this current society. What are we going to do in this world to prosper, right? That's what he's dealing with. That's how he's approaching this question. But again, in terms of our economic system, he needs to reject that. He needs to reject our political system. And the third, I'm just giving examples here, but currency, right? In the ancient world, your currencies are going to be things like actual material stuff. At one point it's sugar in some regions of the world. In some other parts of the world, it's salt. You know what I'm saying? During the transatlantic slave trade, you had people being traded for, certain spices and rum and things like that. The material is like kind of an expanded barter system. It's kind of economic that you're going to be dealing with, or the kind of currency that you're going to find in the ancient world. But you're not going to find something like what we have here, to my knowledge. Certainly not in Kemet, to my knowledge, where you've got the currency, i.e., the dollar, that's not backed by a commodity. You know what I'm saying?
It's backed on faith.
It's backed on faith, right? If I pull out a dollar, you believe that dollar is worth something. You know what I'm saying? And we function on that common social construct, called the dollar, right? Well, that social construct doesn't translate well into ancient Kemet. Right. This notion, what I'm saying, has been given to us. Right. That's what it is. So now you're gonna have to reject our way of handling currency. And so yet again, that's gonna make it difficult for you to engage in the our current economic system. So again, like I talked about before, when people make fallacious statements, it's gonna come back to bite you one way or the other. Because if somebody holds you to that, then that fallacious statement that you made is going to eat away at your other arguments and your other positions, kind of like just like acid. That's why you want to stay away from fallacies. Okay. So, with his statement about, I want to say it was in round one, and what he says right there kind of, jogged my memory about it. This notion of, rejecting Christianity, discarding it on the basis of how he believes, we came to receive it. You know what I'm saying? He'll have to reject. These are examples of the other things that he will have to reject, which would then undermine the points that he's going to make about how Kemeticism can supposedly help us to prosper in the world.
Right. So and I think this is a great example of how one needs to think it through. When someone makes a claim, what you want to do is take that claim and walk it down to its most logical conclusion. Right? A lot of people just stop at the claim, But you got to say, okay, if what you're saying is true, if we go down this particular road, where's our destination?
Absolutely.
You know, so that's exactly what you did just now, which is great. So
absolutely, yep.
So yeah, so let's keep watching.
Okay, cool. So
All right, let me
brought it back up.
All right, cool. Let's go.
Are we good? Okay, cool. Let me here we go.
Strong movement that can partner with you. That's what I want to do. And I truly hope that what will happen is
that's what I was waiting for.
Okay, cool.
That's the part. Partnering up with somebody. You do not partner up with someone unless they have answers. Right? Now, the round is called what? Who has the answers? You're by you saying you want to partner with us, you're saying we have the answers. Right? So continue.
There we go.
You're going to go back to an ancient form of Christianity. Because if you do that, what we do will look almost no different from each other. Then we'll be able to work in lockstep. That's what I'm hoping. And so I want to just recognize that there's been a lot of work done, but more needs to be done. Take a look at this incredible queen here. Her name is Queen Afua. One of the things that we have seen the Kemetic tradition do in excellence is bring forth health and wellness in our community. That if there's anything that marks the Kemetic community, it is that. Excellence in diet, excellence in dietary practices and health practices. That's what you're usually going to see when you see a practitioner. My elder is over here eating oranges. Not a candy bar, oranges. Not fried chicken, oranges. And look at his face. He's like, that was good. That's one of the things that the Kemetic tradition has brought forward in excellence, health and wellness.
All right, you can pause it.
I do want to say to you.
We on the same page, man. Every time I'm about to pause it, you right there, bro. All right, cool. Go ahead, man.
I mean, people in the conscious community are health conscious. Now, there are some who, unfortunately take a pseudo stance when it comes to health and wellness. But for the most part, there's a lot of vegans. There's a lot of people who are plant-based, who take different herbs. And I rock with that. I'm plant-based. I've been plant-based for a year now. So yeah, I think that's a great thing. But you got that from somewhere. You guys are not the first ones to institute health and wellness, right? And the reason why I say that, if I could share my screen real quick.
Here we go. Bars coming.
All right. Can you see my screen?
It's a little bit small, larger maybe. Yeah, there we go. Okay.
How about now?
Got it. There you go.
All right. So this is the works of Dionysius the Areopagite. It says here, the world the Christians entered during the Greco-Roman era had a colossal void with respect to caring for the sick and dying. Dionysius, a Christian bishop of the 3rd century, described the existing behavior of the pagans toward their fellow sick human beings in an Alexandrian plague in about 80 to 50. The pagans, he said, thrust aside anyone who began to be sick and kept aloof even from their dearest friends and cast the sufferers out upon the public roads, half dead, and left them unburied and treated them with utter contempt when they died. All right, this is the world in which the Christians live. So what did the Christians do? Well, how different from the behavior of the Christians? Dionysius tells us that the Christians, when it came to caring for the sick and dying, ignored the danger to themselves. Many of our brethren, while in their exceeding love and brotherly kindness, did not spare themselves, but kept each other and visited the sick without thought of their own peril, and ministered to them, I don't know how you say this name, assiduously, and treated them for their healing in Christ, died from time to time most joyfully, drawing upon themselves their neighbors' diseases and willingly taking over their own persons the burden of the sufferings of those around them. Second person here, the Benguinus of Dijon, a 2nd century Christian who was martyred in Epigony because he, quote, nursed, supported, and protected a number of deformed and crippled children that had been saved from death after failed abortions and exposures. This is from George Grant, Third Time Around, a history of the pro-life movement from the 1st century to the present. So he was killed because he took care of children that society did not want to take care of themselves. Right? This is a Christian doing this.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it says here, saving physically frail, unwanted children was an affront to the Romans. It violated their cultural norms. Recall the words of Seneca, the first century Roman philosopher. Quote, we drown children who at birth are weakly and abnormal. Now, let's look real quick at some of the institutions that the church created in antiquity. You have the diaconia that cared for widows. We see that in Acts, and it happened around AD 37. We see the metrocula, which is the church list of needy persons. They established common treasuries to aid the needy. We see that in 1 Corinthians. We formed collegia, solidarities, and factioses, voluntary associations to aid the unfortunate. They provided for orphans, godparents at baptism. They helped solicited by bishops. That are orphan trophia, introduced buildings for orphans in the 4th century. They buildings for foundlings in the 4th century. Monasteries were used for housing many orphans. What else here? They established the first institutions that serve only the sick. They constructed the xenodokia, buildings that house strangers, travelers, and the sick, late 4th century. The potosia, institutions for the poor. The gerontocomia, institutions for the aged. They established the typhlocomia, institutions for the blind in Jerusalem. They provided health care for lepers by hospitals in St. Lazarus during the Crusades. Maintained Domus Sancti Spiritus, House of the Holy Spirit, German hospitals. Maintained voluntary associations, primary and long-standing instruments of Christian charity and compassion, 1st century to present. And I'll stop there. So,
well, I can add in another one actually, because and folks can well, maybe I'll put it in the chat just for people who want to fact check me on it. But you also have what's called the plague of Cyprian. You know what I'm saying? Now, Cyprian was a North African, bishop, theologian, what have you, clergyman, and he actually was living during the time where Christians were taking all kind of flack at one point. And they're like, oh, y'all Christians are, responsible for these plagues and all this bad stuff going on. And so plague breaks out. It was just terrible. And, Cyprian, Bishop Cyprian, this North African bishop, orders members to get out there and care for the sick. And it's documented, some of them, just like the first example that you gave, they end up, perishing because they end up taking on the illness and so on and so forth. But ultimately, long story short, what happens is, after the plague subsides, those who had, many of those who had been critical previously of Christianity were able to look upon these Christians who literally had risked their lives and some lost their lives to care for the sick. And it really was effective in terms of the church being able to grow, particularly, I want to say in North Africa. So, I mean, again, you have this Christian ethic of compassion producing tangible means and outlets of caring for people, particularly in regard to medicine. And it's actually so when we look at hospitals today, I mean that's an outworking of that tradition. I'm saying of that.
Well, that particular bishop you just mentioned, if I could be wrong, please fact check me, but I believe he is the first one to make an actual hospital.
Oh, okay, yeah, you might be right. You might be right.
So
Cyprian, Bishop Cyprian, So while on the one hand, I do think that I think Jabari is probably right in terms of their community, being more intentional, about their health. And in my understanding, I don't know if all of them believe this, but my understanding is that because he does articulate that he believes everything is one, and actually we're gonna get back to that in the Q&A because that's gonna produce some interesting stuff there. But anyway. Let's say that for later. But with them believing they're one with all things and wanting to make sure that their personal vibrations align with the vibrations of the universe and so on and so forth, they don't want to have any impurities, and therefore they're going to take care of themselves to be in better alignment with the rest of nature, vibrations out there, and all that kind of stuff. And so that's kind of like the impetus or the what compels them to be. Health conscious, which I'm not saying. I mean, clear is not a bad thing. As a matter of fact, I'll go as far as to say that in the Christian church, at least in America, I think that we've fallen victim to the abundance ethic. I'm saying, where we just partake and partake and partake, when we don't need to. And so I think that's something that, people like myself, we're actually looking at going vegetarian as well. I was a vegetarian before for some years. Both of my parents were vegetarians throughout my lifetime. And so I think that is important, that we need to be, more health conscious. And I think that's dope, man. So I'm not criticizing them for that. But I mean, to your point, with respect to health, I mean, they owe, I would say that really everybody in the West owes a great debt to the Christian tradition, that compassion ethic of compassion.
Yep. Absolutely. So I just want to put that out there. So let's continue.
Cool.
Let me share your screen. All right. Let's go.
All right.
That in order for us to understand what we have to do, we have to have clarity of purpose. What is the biggest challenge that faces African Americans? Just call them out. What do you think?
Dang on it, man. I know I hate to keep stopping, man, but I got to stop right there. You know what I'm saying? Because I think this begins to get into why I think many people, from what I've seen, had problems with this round. And why I think maybe people who attended the debate felt that maybe this round was the weakest of all three on both sides, not just Jabari, but Bantu as well. You know what I'm saying? So I really want to touch on this. So he asked a question. He says, we have to, or he says rather, we have to understand our purpose. Now, I think to understand both sides of this round, I think when people said, when people looked at the question, what is, between Christianity and Kemet, who has the answers? I think they were expecting both sides to give an itemized list of things that need to occur in the Black community that are outworkings of either worldview, right? And what you had is neither side provided that. Actually, what both sides did, and I think it was right. Actually, I think they both took the right approach to answering the question. They both attempted to give an account for the fundamentals upon which the community should be built. You know what I'm saying? The fact of the matter is, let's say, for example, with economics, that's something that I think is understandable, right? I agree with you. I'm going there too, Matt Jackson, about purpose. But when it comes to economics, you can't have an economic system that works without some sort of ethics, some framework of ethics, right? But ethics, when we're talking about, morality, it has to have some sort of grounding. It's got to fit within your worldview in such a way that you can hold a consistent and coherent ethical framework. You know what I'm saying? And not all worldviews can do that. I'm saying not all worldviews can do that. But my whole point is, something as simple, somebody might think, okay, well, we need to get tightened up economically. Yeah, that's true, but you can't even really engage economics unless you answer certain ethical questions. Okay, every system of economics, every approach to economics is going to try to answer the questions: what ought to be the case in terms of how people access resources in any given geographical area, system, group, or what have you. Okay. Now, the communists, for example, may say access to resources is going to be, I don't know, how did that? I turned on my Siri thing. A communist might say something about access to resources needs to be governed by the government, you know what I'm saying, by the state, right? That's how access ought to be attained, to resources. Whereas a capitalistic society, laissez-faire economics, is going to say, no, there needs to be freedom of access to the average individual as much as possible. You see what I'm saying? Right. What ought to be the case there? I'm saying there's some fundamental questions you have to ask about ethics and the nature of man and things like that people take for granted that you have to deal with before you even get to economics, right? And so, in other words, it's almost like some people want to do algebra before they get 1 + 1 = 2. You see what I'm saying? And so I think actually to Jabari's credit, you know what I'm saying, and to Vince Bantu's credit, where I think that, at least from some of the stuff that I've watched, they're catching a lot of flack for how they answer this question. But I think they actually took the right approach. Before you get ahead of yourself and want to deal with specifics in terms of a plan or so on and so forth, there are certain fundamental building blocks that need to be at the foundation of your approach, okay, upon which you build. And if those foundations aren't addressed and you just skip to the details, that's like building a house with no foundation. It's going to fall apart.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's dealing with the question of purpose. Now, I'm being a little bit long-winded, but to my man Mac Jackson just asked the question, what does purpose imply? All right. Now, purpose implies intentions. I'm saying now maybe he's going somewhere else with that, but purpose. If there is a purpose to who we are and what we're supposed to be doing in the world, that implies that there's some intentions, right? Now, if there's a purpose behind how everything in reality works, right, then there has to be an intender behind reality. So now already, if we go far enough, I'm not going to go all the way there now, but that already X's atheism out. You know what I'm saying? Because if the natural world is all there is, then there is no overarching intentions in terms of how things go in the world.
There's no intentions, period. Things just happen.
Yeah,
there is no intention.
Right. You know what I'm saying? But on a that deep metaphysical level, it certainly isn't there. So, I agree with Jabari. I'm saying in terms of this is actually just one of the issues or questions that he brings up where he's talking about the foundation, and I think he is addressing the right issue. Now, how his worldview answers the question of what that purpose is going to be different from how the biblical worldview answers that question. And what I will submit is that the question that he's bringing up, I don't think that Kemet, that their spiritual system, ideology or whatever, has the correct answer to the question that he's raising. You know what I'm saying? And so, maybe we can get back to that.
Now it's my turn to tell you that you're giving him too much credit.
Okay. All right.
Because he'll tell us about certain individuals within the Kemetic worldview that has done great things, right? But that's not the topic of the round, right? Does the Kemetic worldview have answers, right? He has already acquiesced earlier in this round that they do not. In fact, we're going to partner with you because you have the answers, right? And what Bantu does, which is funny, and I don't think he meant to be slick about it, but he kind of starts his round saying, well, since you already know that the church has done all these great things, let me focus on this very specific thing now. Because he also took notice. You acquiesced. So, yeah, I agree that you agreed that we have the answers. Now that you know that, let me preach the gospel.
Yeah. That's a good point. I hadn't looked at it. That's interesting. That's very interesting. Yeah. I got you. You know what I'm saying? All right, cool.
Anyway, let's continue.
Video? All right, cool. All right.
The police, racism, poverty, abortion, education, self-hatred. You're going to call all of those out, and I'm going to say yes, and yes. But I want us to understand that we actually have the resources to meet those things now. On October 5th of 2019, if we truly sought to actually address those issues, we would be able to address them. You'll see here that we are actually reaching buying power of nearly over $1.3 trillion of buying power. So if we wanted to solve all of those things you called out, we actually could. So the question you have to ask is, why aren't we? And I'm going to argue that something really serious has gone on. We have a challenge with the image of what the African is, of who the African is.
Pause it here too.
We even have people that,
him stating how much economic power we do have and that we don't use, facts. I agree. But how's that based on any Kemetic principles, though? What he's saying is true. It is true. But how's that based on Kemetic principles, and how does Kemetic worldview answer that situation? I don't hear any of that, but continue.
Well, actually, I'm going to challenge something else here too. So, and it's funny. Once again, we try to stop it at the same point. There's a whole lot to chew on in this round. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, when he says "we," okay, what "we" is he talking about, right? Because again, he's trying to give an account of the Kemetic worldview and our current conditions, if you will, and how we're going to get over where we're at. You know what I'm saying? So when he talks about we, I feel like he goes back and forth between, or he's taking we to mean, he'll use terms like the African, right? It takes on this very Pan-Africanist type of vibe.
That's true.
I want to really, deal with Kemet. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't see them as having a Pan-Africanist vision.
Oh no. They had visions of empire, strictly.
Absolutely.
Strictly about the empire.
People dealing with the Nubians or anybody else for that matter. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's just how they got down. You know what I'm saying? They don't, if you look at their mythology, right? Think about it. Okay. Think about this concept of Ma'at that they adhere to. You know what I'm saying? Now, and I'm talking about the ancient Egyptians, right? They believe that if the individuals govern their lives, you know what I'm saying, based upon Ma'at, order, righteousness, so on and so forth, and collectively in their dealings together in terms of how they deal with one another, they do the same thing, even in terms of how they, operated in public affairs and things like that, right? If everybody is operating according to Ma'at and what's his name, and the Pharaoh is facilitating Ma'at, okay, then everything's supposed to be cool, right? Now, wait a minute. Now, what if everybody is operating in Ma'at and then the rest of the whole African continent isn't? you know what I'm saying? Like the ancient Egyptian wasn't thinking about that. They were thinking about what's going on here in Kemet. You know what I'm saying? How are we governing ourselves? That their world revolved around them. That's my point.
And when they did extend outside their borders, it was about conquest and trade.
Right.
It wasn't about reciprocity with my neighbors and we're going to hold hands and sing songs and, no, it was conquest and trade.
Right.
That's what they were about.
Just like everybody else. You see what I'm saying? So again, when he talks about, when he uses the term we and, coupled with his use of the term, the African or African, it takes on this Pan-Africanist view of the world that I don't see present, in Kemet. Certainly not throughout all of Kemet's history. There's definitely no doubt about that.
It's a modern connotation, right? Because if we're talking
the
pre-dynastic or Middle King, there was no African, right? African is a continent. It's not a people group. It's a continent. Within a continent, various different tribes and people groups.
Sure.
Kemet was just one of those.
Sure.
Which war against the other portions of the continent.
Right.
Right, the Nubians, Wicked Kush. Shout out to Vocab for bringing that out. Right.
Another dagger.
We have stelas showing, all these foreign slaves that they brought in the name of their gods. They wrote it in their walls.
I mean, it's true. As a matter of fact, before I forget, I want to cross-pollinate a little bit.
Sure.
Vocab Malone. Check out his channel. You know what I'm saying? If you haven't already, subscribe to it. I know that this coming Sunday, Vocab, Matt Jackson, was it Chris Featherston, I think his name is, and Nefertiti are going to be doing some commentary on this debate as well. So
nice.
You think what we're doing here? Check them out. Also, if you want to give that a shout out. So I want to say this Sunday. Matt Jackson's in the chat, so he can probably fill us in on the time and all that kind of stuff. So
definitely put that in the chat, bro. Yeah. That's what's up.
Right. Now, before we go forward, too, again, we're talking about this Pan-African we, right?
Right.
What about before the transatlantic slave trade? Okay, you got various different groups on the west side of the continent, Western Africa, right? You got the Home, the Fulani, the Yoruba, there's all different. The Congolese, they end up getting caught in the transatlantic slave trade. There's all these different people groups. Okay. All these different folks who identify themselves as different people groups on the west side and central Africa. You know what I'm saying? And it's this idea of this united Africanness that is a product that is in many ways an outworking. You know what I'm saying, of them having found all these different people finding themselves in the common condition of slavery. Right. You know what I'm saying? Now, I just want to go ahead and say, I don't have a problem with the term African, whatever. I don't have a problem with it because at the end of the day, looking throughout human history, identities, ethnicities, nationalities form in various different ways. Some positive, some not so positive. So, given that common condition, that's not a problem for me. I'm just saying that for somebody who takes issue with those things that were supposedly given to us, I'm saying by the European, then you have to understand that his Pan-Africanist lens is at very least an outworking of the conditions that were imposed upon us by those Europeans. I'm saying it was, if you want to return to, as he keeps talking about returning back to Africa, returning back to the African ways, so on and so forth. Well, return back to the tribalism that would have been an earmark of how we got down with each other prior to the transatlantic slave trade.
And it wasn't this romantic notion of this United States of Africa where everybody got along and it was just this great block party where we toasted marshmallows, and like that was far from what really happened, right? So
the block party, the African block party, and why a block party, man? But see, this goes back to, I'm not trying to nitpick, but this goes back to and I'm struggling to find a word that's not as biting. But this goes back to the revisionist history.
Facts. That
people like Dr. Ben, Dr. Clark, to some extent, Dr. Anthony Job, like that beautification. I'm saying this overarching beautification of our history beyond historical facts. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a bunch of beautiful stuff in our history. Absolutely. There's a bunch of value there.
Absolutely.
What happens is people venture beyond that out of this emotional need to prop up that Africanness beyond reality. You know what I'm saying? That's just a fact of the matter. You know what I'm saying? Every ethnic group has skeletons in the closet. That's what it is. There's nothing, that's reality. Why? I'm gonna go back to the Bible. All of sin falls short of the glory of God.
There you go.
That is the feature an unfortunate feature of how we get down. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, I just think that this when he's using this term it just seems to me that he's touching on something that is less African than the other sorts of things that he expects us to adhere to and reclaim.
Well, to his defense,
okay,
to a point, when he thinks of Kemet as the culmination of the greatness that is the continent.
Sure.
Right? I've heard that Kemet is the flower.
Yeah, he actually says it here,
of Africa, right? So that in his mind, he is talking Africa when he talks about Kemet, but it doesn't really work because you're smuggling in a modern connotation to an ancient landmass, right? So it doesn't really fit.
And then my question would be is if you go throughout, like that seems very subjective to me. You know what I'm saying? If he wants to say that being in the present and looking backward, the most prominent, prosperous, to be esteemed society was Kemet, and in that sense, it was the flowering of the continent. If that's what you mean, then I think that's just a very narrow view of looking at African history. Quite frankly, you know what I'm saying. I think in some ways it's informed by the fact that studies of the African continent have yielded more about that society than many others. I'm saying there's all sorts of pyramids and archaeology, that kind of stuff. You hear more about Egypt than you will Nubia, right? You know what I'm saying? And there's if not more pyramids in Nubia. That I think there's actually more in Nubia now.
Yes, they are.
So we just don't hear about it. You know what I'm saying? So cats you don't have modern day Nubians like that. You know what I'm saying? The same with Comedics. But my whole point is for somebody in like West Africa, would they look at Kemet? I'm thinking about somebody before the transatlantic slave trade. Were they sitting around thinking about Kemet as being the flowering of the African continent? No. You know what I'm saying? Were Kemet's immediate neighbors looking to him like,
heck no. Heck no.
They was
not Kush. Not Kush. Kush it was on site with Kush. No.
Right.
On site.
Site. Exactly. It's like, that's what I'm saying. So to me, it seems very subjective. This notion of Kemet being kind of just placed in this role of headship over the entire continent. I just think it's very subjective, and I don't think it can be historically sustained. You know what I'm saying? There's a bunch of different ethnicities, a bunch of different people groups, a bunch of different nations on the continent of Africa, and have been throughout the human history. You know what I'm saying? So I think that again, out of our thirst for medicating a sense of lost Africanness and self-esteem, ethnic related self-esteem, I think that's what produces this need to place Kemet, you know what I'm saying, at this pedestal, and to paint Africa in a picture that outpaces what the historical record shows about what life in Africa was like. Yeah,
and where does this Egyptomania comes from? Who are the first people to go crazy like that?
I mean, you got to go to England. You got to go to people like this dude. I can't remember his first name, but Frobenius. His last name was Frobenius. There's a book called Egyptomania. They got a whole chapter on it. You know what I'm saying? And it talks about they were having mummy unwrapping parties in Europe. I mean, it was all the rage in the 1800s. You know what I'm saying? And that's where you get the Gerald Masseys. That's where you get the people that his elders are quoting and drawing from. You know what I'm saying? The anti-Jops are drawing from people like Frobenius and so on and so forth, right? So I mean
it wasn't even like an academic perusal of the culture, right? It was more fetish.
Yeah,
fetish for Kemet.
Right.
And I feel like a lot of people in this community don't know that their inspiration comes from a European fetish of this particular part of Africa.
Yeah, and it wasn't even because we have to understand that, so I'm going to mix up some of this, but actually, I think it's correct. So I want to say it was Napoleon who's going to war. Actually, yeah, there you go. Brother said France. That's where I was going. Napoleon, is dealing with the Ottoman Empire, and in some of his conquests, he's able to make some inroads, into Egypt, Kemet, or what have you. Mm-hmm. And it opens up that area of the world. I'm saying his conquest opens up that area of the world to European travelers who want to go someplace exotic and different, and prior to Napoleon's conquest, that area of the world was not safe. I'm saying it was inaccessible. You know what I'm saying? But now that they can ride over there, they can see all these different exotic things, and that's that really feeds a lot of the Egyptomania.
The commercial aspect of Kemet.
Right, exactly.
As opposed to the technology of Kemet. You know what I mean?
Wait, say it again. Down to what now?
It was the commercial aspect of it, as opposed to the anthropology of Kemet. Right? They would freestyle make stuff up about Kemet because they didn't know anything about Kemet.
Didn't know. Yeah, I mean, you're right.
So they made perfume bottles with little mummy cases, and it's like when you go to Yankee Stadium and you go buy the small little baseball bats and the figurines. Like that's what it became. that's Egypt,
I mean, that's how it popped off, and then you find some of it, appearing through some of the abolitionists. I don't want to get that twisted. I mean, it was there as well, but you have this dual stream. You know what I'm saying, but in terms of the intellectual heritage, you know what I'm saying, of the current Kemetic movement, you've got to go back to England. I'm saying, and that's where it flows from predominantly. So yeah.
But let's get back. I mean, we kind of addressed it, I think, a little.
Yeah, I don't know what there, man.
We definitely did a
we're only like halfway through Jabari Osaze. So yeah, we probably will end up having to do Bantu maybe next time. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
All right.
I'm down for whatever. Here we go.
Don't want to say they're African. And so what we actually have to do is we have to now be corrected. Did you know that Black and Latino youth watch up to an hour more TV every day? That Black and Latino youth spend about 45 minutes more on other forms of media? And then there's an interesting study that comes out, this is really small here, from the Journal of Communications Research that actually says that the only group whose self-esteem...
Hey, I just want to pause. He was real intent on pointing that citation out. He had to make sure.
You got caught out on it before.
Earlier in the round, Bantu called him out. So by this point, he's real shook about letting that slide without... He pointed that out with the quickness. I just want to point that out.
Before you continue, what he just shared, right? What's the title of this round again?
Yeah, who has answers for the Black community?
What's the answer to that then?
Great,
that's the issue. Absolutely. What's the answer? Mm-hmm. You bringing this up? I'm assuming you have an answer. I don't have an answer. But anyway, continue.
That's
is with more television is white boys. So we're watching more and it's damaging us more. This is a critical issue.
Yeah, I think maybe he's trying to go back to the self-image thing. You know what I'm saying? He's saying that black people are watching more TV and all these other things than everybody else, but it's more conducive to the esteem of white folks, which is probably true. You know what I'm saying? I mean, maybe
I agree with
that. You know what I mean? But now the question is going to be, I agree with you. I think it's where you're going with it. I don't think he ever comes back around to the answer for it in any way that would help him to carry this around. I think that's what maybe he wasted too much time describing the problem where he didn't get around to the solution. I think
exactly.
Yeah.
I'm going to play the shortest possible clip of this. The shortest. In fact, I might even speak through it. But understand that CNN actually did a study. They recreated the dog.
Go. Our second major finding, even black children as a whole have some bias toward whiteness, but far less than white children.
She'll be the smart child. And why is she the smart child?
Because she is white.
Okay. Show me the dumb child. And why is she the dumb child?
Because she hates.
What I want you to understand is that our major challenge is understanding who we are and what we're capable of. Having a reconstructed, healthy view of what being African is. The best way to do that is to actually go back and fetch it. To remember who we are in order to know what we're able to do.
Now he hit on a point right here. Like, just given my overall premise for my podcast, I got to touch on it. You know what I'm saying? Now, notice what he said, right? He talks about this identity issue. We don't know who we are and what we're capable of. And he talks about how we need to go back to our African selves and regain this African heritage, you know what I'm saying, of who the African is and what the African is capable of. And this is something that I deal with all the time. You know what I'm saying? Now, I wholeheartedly agree, you know what I'm saying, that we have an identity issue on our hands. I don't think that it's exclusive to the African or African American community. I don't think that it is. Actually, when I first started doing True ID, now True ID stands for, that's my podcast, stands for the real you, Imago Dei being Latin for image of God, now as described in Genesis 1:26 and 27. Now, when he talks about, reaching back to that, for that Africanness, so to speak, right? One thing I've said all the time is whether it be the Kemetic trying to reach back to Africa, the Moors trying to reach back to, Mauritania, you know what I'm saying? Modern day Morocco, the Hebrew Israelites trying to reach back to Israel. Right. One thing I've said over and over again is that folks aren't reaching back far enough. You know what I'm saying? I would suggest to you that you've got to go back further. You're saying you've got to go back to who God created us to be. At the end of the day, we are made in the image of God. That's the proper starting point for understanding who we are, what we ought to be doing, what our purpose is, what our capabilities are. I'm saying all of that is spelled out in the biblical worldview, because before there was a concept of the African continent, before there was any notion about there being a nation of Israel or Muslims or Moors or whatever, before there was any idea about nations or anything like that, there were human beings who were made in the image of God. You know what I'm saying? And if you really want to regain your identity and a proper understanding of who you are, what you're capable of, and so forth, I'm going to argue that you've got to go back to the fact that we are beings made in the image of God, and I will substantiate that with the fact, and I won't go into it here, but the reason why I say that is when I say that we're made in the image of God or make any other claim, I'm saying that's, flows from the biblical worldview, I'm not saying it as just, an opinion. I'm saying in the same sense that 2 + 2, the quantity that we call 2 plus the quantity that we call 2 equals the quantity that we call 4. In that same sense, it is a fact of the matter that we are made in the image of God. And there are arguments that we can provide to demonstrate, I'm saying, the truth of the biblical worldview, and thus, that would lend itself toward accepting this notion that we're made in God's image. I would make arguments for that. You know what I'm saying? With that being said, and maybe actually I'll just throw this in here real quick. Every claim that he's going to make for the Kemetic worldview having answer to this or answer to that, my question is going to be this: saying, okay, the ancestors believe you claim that the ancestors believe such and such about Kemet. You believe that Kemet, the Kemetic worldview has all these answers, so on and so forth. What is the evidence that the Kemetic worldview is true? I'm saying, what evidence can you bring to the table to demonstrate that the Kemetic worldview is an accurate framework for understanding the world? That it is the case, I'm saying, that the claims that you're making about the Kemetic worldview are factual. I'm saying from down to your understanding of who the Most High is, or whatever that ultimate reality is, your account of ethics, the whole shebang. You know what I'm saying? You can tell me a whole lot about what the ancestors believe. My question for you is, from a Kemetic standpoint, what can you show me to demonstrate that the Kemetic worldview is true? I'm saying, and if you can't demonstrate that, if you can't provide evidence, I'm saying, that would suggest that the Kemetic worldview is in alignment with reality, then you can postulate all the answers to our plight that you want. I'm saying, but
even before that, he would have to also prove, before whether or not it's true, the claims he's making about Kemet. Would those people agree with his claims? Right? Because you're saying this is what Kemet is. Great. Can you show me a stela or a papyrus or something that's written in the walls that says the same thing that you're saying from these actual ancestors? Or this is your take on it? Right? Because it's not really about because you're saying you're representing an ancient worldview. Well, I would love to hear from those people to see if what you're saying agrees with what they're saying. And then we could get to whether or not what they're saying is true.
Right.
So
right. Good stuff.
Yep.
I just want to throw that out there.
Nah, good stuff, bro.
We can have $3.1 trillion of buying power. But if we don't recognize that we need to tie our bundles together, that the white man's ice is not colder. Well, I'll let that sink in. That the white man's ice is not colder. Then what will happen is we will be able to do those things together. That's what we have to do. And I would say to you that there is no tradition that is better equipped to do that than understanding what we did when we were on top of the world. You're looking here at Imhotep. Hey, say Imhotep.
All right, dang on him. I got to stop it there too, bro. My bad. I just want to make a quick point. But he said something very fascinating. Now, he says that in order to understand, what we're capable of and, where we are right now and blah, 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 we need to understand, kind of view ourselves through the lens of where we were when, quote, we were on top of the world. Again, he's using that Pan-African we, right. But he's talking about when we were on top of the world. Now, I would argue this, you know what I'm saying? Now, that seems to be pretty arbitrary to me. You know what I'm saying? And what I mean by that is this. Could it be, actually, I might have a slide on this. Maybe I did or maybe I didn't. Actually, yeah, I certainly did. Matter of fact, I certainly did. Actually, let me share my screen right quick because I do have a slide on this. Got a slide, brother. All right. All right, so I'm just switching screens here.
People, okay. Life, what good, man? What's popping?
Okay. Boom. Can y'all see that?
Yeah. All right.
Oh, you okay? You can see it?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, cool. All right. So, he's talking about value and identity. You know what I'm saying, understanding who we are, what we're capable of. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I've got here. Capabilities and achievements. You know what I'm saying, he wants to say, well, in order for us to get a better gauge of what we're able to do, then we need to look at how, our capabilities and achievements when we were on top, right? Now, I would submit that, I would argue this is kind of arbitrary. You know what I'm saying? So let me ask this question. Is past achievement an indication of potential or the inadequacy of one's worldview to sustain progress and productivity over time? You know what I'm saying? Like maybe, we were successful back in the past.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But should that be interpreted as, okay, this is what we are capable of? or should it be interpreted as at that time? I'm saying this is what we were able to achieve. I'm saying, but that worldview wasn't able to sustain itself, so that's where we are. That's why we are where we are now. You know what I'm saying? Like you can look at it either way. How do you adjudicate between understanding the high point of our history, so to speak? You know what I'm saying? As being something that is relevant to our present in terms of what we're able to do, or just a matter of kind of like what we were able to do at the time. So let me use a football analogy. Okay, you got somebody like I'm just throwing out a random running back like Emmitt Smith. I'm saying he was in the league for like a minute, right? Then you have somebody like a Bo Jackson. Bo Jackson was great during the time when he was in the NFL, but he had the injury and then he had to dip out. You know what I'm saying? So, when it comes to, how do you adjudicate between, which is the proper way to evaluate the running back position? Do you use a guy, do you go with the achievements and say, okay, well, this is what Bo Jackson achieved in a short period of time? Or do you look at, this is what a full career looks like, for somebody like an Emmitt Smith? You know what I'm saying? How do you properly adjudicate that question?
Well, you would need a larger sample size.
Yeah.
You couldn't just go by 2 people, right?
I would think so.
You would need a larger sample size. So
right. So now you got to go around. So that's my point. So now you got to say, well, okay, well, what about the Chinese? They had a pretty good run. They had about, I think they're running on like 3,000 years now. You know what I'm saying? They've done pretty well for themselves. And you got to go, basically ethnicity for ethnicity. You know what I'm saying? It starts stacking up. You know what I'm saying? Who's done what? And then the question becomes like, who decides what types of achievements and what types of capabilities are the measuring stick by which, a people group should be evaluated? You know what I'm saying? Right? Now, I would argue that
who gets to do that? Who gets to judge that? Right?
Who gets to judge that?
Who gets to judge that?
It becomes this sliding scale, you know what I'm saying, of, who's great and who's not. Now, maybe you have a group of people, say, for example, what if you have a society? Right, perfect example. Let's talk about economic power, right? Germany was super economically powerful. Actually, you know what? Scratch Germany. I'll bring it back. I'll bring it to America. I'm saying America was balling out during the 1800s. Right. We did pretty well for ourselves. Americans at the time did pretty well.
Not us. Yeah, not us.
But that's my point. That's my point. I'm saying
right.
America, as an entity, America was doing well in terms of international trade, but morally it wasn't doing so hot, because in order to achieve that, it had to just subjugate a whole group of people brutally so. You know what I'm saying? Now, if we're just evaluating America strictly on its economic achievements, you know what I'm saying? If that's the metric that we use, then we would say, yeah, man, it was balling. But if we're going to evaluate them on moral grounds, we were like, nah, I can't rock with it. Right. So the measuring stick that you apply, you know what I'm saying, is going to dictate how you assess or evaluate, this or that, society. Now, my whole point is I'm trying to get around to, what I'm trying to say is this notion of looking at, when we were on top in terms of prosperity and, so on and so forth, and what we're able to do in the world. I think that's just the wrong measuring stick. I think the right way to assess it is to, again, I go back to the biblical worldview. You know what I'm saying? Who are we? You know what I'm saying? We were made in the image of God. Okay. That's an objective fact. You know what I'm saying, and I can provide arguments to substantiate that. You know what I'm saying? So, if it is the case, let's just put it as an if for right now. If it is the case that God exists and made us in his image, right? Then our value and our identity is grounded in an objective source, i.e. God, right? It's fixed. There's a fixed point in terms of our value. We don't have to go any further. Like our value, our understanding of ourselves and what we're able to do is not going to fluctuate depending upon it's not going to hinge on our capabilities and achievements. No matter what you've done or what you're able to do, your value remains the same.
Right.
No matter what you're able to do,
described it to you. You didn't earn it. God just said you're going to represent me, and that's it.
Simple as that.
Had nothing to do with what you did. Right.
Right.
Another thing, though, that I thought of when he said that was supremacy. Like, if he's properly representing the Kemetic worldview, right, then supremacy as an ideal is not problematic.
Interesting.
Right?
Okay. Where you going? Yeah.
It's who has the supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they're concerned about. So if you have a Kemetic worldview and you're trying to formulate a hermeneutic of a Kemetic worldview for today, you have a different take on white supremacy than what me and you would have.
Sure.
Because we think white supremacy is sin because we think supremacy itself is sinful. The Kemetic worldview would not. It all depends on, well, who's supreme. If I'm on top, it's good. If you're on top, it's bad.
It's bad. Right.
Because that's what he's saying. Because we got to go back to when we was on top, when we had the supremacy.
Right.
Oh, so the supremacy in itself is not bad, right? It's just who. Oppression is not bad.
It's just who's gaining from it, right?
Who's doing the oppressing, right?
Right.
So then, but then, is that Ishfat or is that Ma'at?
Okay, brother. Ishfat, for those who don't know, Ishfat would be the equivalent of the word we would kind of use evil. You know what I'm saying? The word Ishfat actually probably more closely translates to this notion of disorder. I'm saying, so they use order and chaos in the way that we use good and evil. So that's what he was referring to there. But I mean, no, you raise a great point though. You know what I'm saying? Like it becomes subjective. You know what I'm saying? It's the greatness or goodness is in the eye of the beholder. You know what I'm saying? If we on top, hey, we good. If not, it's just like one of those kind of things. Let me just put this real quick. I'm putting this link in the chat for a article I wrote on Free Thinking Ministries. And where I kind of lay out just that argument that I just gave a second ago, probably better than I did just now. Anyway, but I just posted that in the chat.
Nice.
You know what I'm saying? There was something else I was gonna say, but we can probably leave it for now. We'll go ahead and move forward here.
Okay.
All right. I gotta.
You're gonna reshare your.
Yeah. Reshare that. Yeah. Let me get that right quick. There's a whole lot more I can say on that. I'm really trying to save some bars for this third part. I mean, for this question and answer, because all right, I'm not even gonna spoil it. I'm just gonna leave it there for now.
Don't do it.
All right. I'm just gonna say this one thing.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
As we're covering these three rounds, just know, don't sleep on the breakdowns that we do of the Q&A. Don't sleep on the breakdowns that we do on the Q&A, because there was something said, and it didn't even have to do with the question that I asked. It was another question that was asked that I'm gonna just take that and demonstrate how at least Jabari's round 1 and 3, his own worldview rips him to shreds.
Uh-oh.
I'm just gonna leave that there. I'm gonna push the play button. I'm gonna just leave it there.
There you go.
All right.
One of the world's first recorded doctors. Imhotep is one of the world's first recorded engineers, builds the world's first building in stone.
Stop it.
Can't even buy a house in the neighborhoods we live in.
Stop it.
Uh-oh. Stop it.
Let's talk about Mr. Imhotep for a minute.
All right.
Let me do this.
Bring it out.
All right. Hold on. Yeah, that's it. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. This is from Religion and Ritual in Ancient Egypt by Emily Tita.
I got that John on the.
I got this.
Yeah. Okay.
Traditions from long after Imhotep's death treated him as a great author of wisdom texts, and especially as a physician. No text from his lifetime mentioned these capacities, and no text mentioned his name in the first 1,200 years following his death. What did he say this guy was doing? Physician, right?
Yeah.
Great engineer, right?
Right.
They don't talk about that until 1,200 years after his death.
Wow.
Oh, it gets better.
Wow.
The best known intercessory cults, in a fitting testament to the Egyptians' reverence for the building arts, focus on two deified architects, Imhotep and Amenhotep. Imhotep was the architect of King Dosier's step pyramid complex. The code of Imhotep is best attested at Memphis and Saqqara, but only from the beginning of the New Kingdom, some 1,000 years after his death. Imhotep is most often shown as a man wearing a skull cap and long gown in the late and Ptolemaic periods. Innumerable bronze figurines were made showing Imhotep seated with a papyrus on his lap, a reference to his wisdom and literacy. Someone who wished to venerate the deity would buy a statuette, inscribe his or her name on it, and leave it in the shrine to the god. In the late period and afterward into the Roman period, Imhotep was associated with doctors, and he was venerated as the son of Ptah. The Romans equated him with Alcepheus, their god of medicine. So yeah, he was known as a doctor when did they describe that?
The Ptolemaic late and Ptolemaic period, the Roman period, late period and Roman period. Yep.
1,000 years after he's mentioned.
I guess actually, you know what?
The first references to the abilities of Imhotep occurred from the 13th dynasty onwards, some 2,200 years after his death. There's Dietrich's Wildon, Egyptian saints, deification, in pharaonic Egypt.
Wow.
So I will deposit that, should we even believe that Imhotep even existed?
That's where I was about to go. You beat me to it, bro. You beat me to it.
Right? Because what they will say is, well, because the Gospels were written so far away from the actual time, he couldn't possibly exist. Now, what's the earliest manuscript that talks about Jesus? Maybe 60, 70 years after the fact?
Oh, well, yeah. Well, actually, we can go.
Mark. I mean, that's still kind of up in the air, first century Mark. I don't know if you want to.
What? No. There's a number of different ways we can go. Because first of all, we about to get into. All right, you know what? Actually, I'm gonna let you finish your point first. You know what I'm saying? Because while you were talking, I thought you was gonna. I thought you were gonna go here. But I'm gonna let you go first. You know what I'm saying?
No, it's cool. I'll give you the alley. You know what I mean? This is just go.
All right. So first of all, to your point. So the first documentation that we got of this dude, you know what I'm saying, is like 1,200 of Imhotep, 1,200 years after he lived.
Right.
Okay. Every last one. I'm talking about, even if I was a conservative, non-believing scholar, and by conservative I mean somebody who's not inclined to give a early dating. Was that
a liberal scholar?
A liberal scholar. You know what I'm saying? Let's go with a liberal scholar who's not inclined to give an early dating to the Gospels or the epistles. The consensus would say, you know what I'm saying, I'll put it this way, you're well within sound scholarship to say that every last one of the New Testament texts, all 27 of those books, were written within the first century. That means that at worst, you know what I'm saying, so they're going to put something like, John, for example, at the back end, maybe in your 90s. I'm saying, so if Jesus is crucified in 30 or 33, whatever, at worst, you're dealing with texts that are 70 years.
Oh, yeah, Paul does predate the Gospels. You're right, MJ.
Thank you. Exactly. MJ beat me to it. Paul predates the Gospel. Now I'm going to go further than that. Okay. Because so one of the Gospels, even if you want to be nitpicky and say Paul didn't write all the epistles, I'm saying one of the epistles that is confirmed, you know what I'm saying, that scholars would agree rather, that he wrote would be 1 Corinthians.
And that has the ancient creedal statement that he quotes from in that.
Thank you. Yes, saying, even liberal, even scholars like a Bart Ehrman or maybe somebody like a James D.G. Dunn, or there's other guys that we can name. You know what I'm saying, they would put that creedal statement in 1 Corinthians. I messed it up. 15, I think it is.
That as well. Yeah.
Say it again.
Gary Habermas, he does that as well. He talks about the creedal.
Yeah. Matter of fact, check out. I think he lays it out in the case for the resurrection. You know what I'm saying, so that's a team up between Gary Habermas and Mike Licona. Okay. The
minimal facts argument.
There you go. And they break down this creedal statement, you know what I'm saying, from Paul in 1 Corinthians, I want to say it's 15. I don't know why I'm mixing that up right now. But yeah, 1 Corinthians 15, where he's talking about how he received the gospel, so on and so forth. They're going to date that creedal passage within 5 years of the resurrection.
Yep.
Some would even say that it dates back to within months of the resurrection. Okay, so here's my thing, right? Jabari has zero hesitance in citing Imhotep as a historical figure. You know what I'm saying? When at the earliest dated reference that we got to this man comes 1,200 years after this man lived. Mind you, we also have, as you just pointed out in your source, it's also the case that the Romans merged Imhotep with some of their deities. All right. Now, one of the arguments that Jabari made was, against Jesus being an actual person was this notion that he was merged from Horus, that you got these parallels, right?
I didn't even think about that. Yeah, so Serapis and all that, right?
He's killing himself right now. He's killing himself. You just showed. I can't pronounce the name of that Roman god. Maybe you can bring it back up, perhaps. You know what I'm saying, but they take Imhotep and they merge him with this Roman god, right? So if that's going to be a check against Jesus being a historical figure, you got to do the same thing for your boy Imhotep. All right, and in the late Roman period, right? You know what I'm saying? If you have an issue with there being this syncretism, and if you believe that to be some sort of evidence against the historicity of Jesus, you have to be consistent. Keep that same energy with Imhotep, bruh. Keep that same energy.
The Romans equated him with, I can't say this guy's name, Asclepius,
yeah,
their god of medicine.
Right.
So
there we go. So
who's doing it? Who's doing it?
The Romans, right. So if syncretism is supposed to, he pointed out this whole thing with when Vince Bantu brought up the Jesus Horus thing, and he felt that went towards his point or something like that. If you go back to that part of the debate and check it out or breakdown or whatever. But he said, "You're doing my work for me." Okay, well, cool. You're doing our work for us, because if that is a check mark against Christianity, then this conflation, or excuse me, this syncretism between Eusebius and Imhotep also cancels out the historicity of Imhotep, who is the first dude and that you're going to call out as being hallmarks of the Kemetic tradition,
who we should look
and archaeology.
We should look to for inspiration of our supremacy that we had.
Right.
So it's like,
this is bad, bro.
Let's be consistent. Let's be consistent.
Fam, this is like people think I'm tripping. I'm tripping because this is like unintended bars right here. Like in none of these breakdowns did we send each other our slides or anything like that. I mean, that was the first time I saw those slides. And the same way you was going with it, I picked up on it as well. I'm saying you saw the thing with the 1,200 years after, and I'm looking at the syncretism, whatever. So basically, with just that point right there that he made in the third round, he literally killed every point that he made in the second round about this Jesus Horus thing. Or if he's going to be consistent, he now has to remove all this esteem and treatment of Imhotep as a historical figure from that third round.
Completely.
Dagger. I mean, that's just a dagger right there. Oh man. All right.
Continue.
I enjoyed that, man. I enjoyed it. That's so fun. Facts.
How about Ptahotep? Say Ptahotep with me.
I'm gonna be real childish and say, you saw that pause right there.
Mm-hmm.
I think if Jabari watches this video, he's gonna actually have that look on his face, that pause when he gets to this part right here. He's gonna he's got to just sit there and be like, "Dang,
got me,
got him."
How about Ptahotep? Say Ptahotep with me. Ptahotep, as I said to you, the person that wrote the world's oldest book. Yet we are people who believe that we should be illiterate, whose children, even in 2019, are told if they excel, that they must be acting white.
You know what? I got a problem with that. Because I think that a lot of people throw that around.
I had a feeling you would.
Yeah, right. Well, he says something like, "We're people that believe that people should be illiterate." I think is what he said. I mean, which maybe he misspoke there. I'll try to give him the benefit of the doubt, but that's clearly not true. I don't know of any community that's more pro-education than the Black community, traditionally speaking. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I was just talking about, matter of fact, I was sitting around at Thanksgiving just last week, and just listening to my aunts and uncles talk about back in the day, and they were talking about that's what you had back in the day. You had your faith, your education, and your family. That's kind of how they viewed things. But education was like the key. You know what I'm saying? Like they understood, that was going to be the key to how you succeed, in this society. I mean, the church. I mean, shoot, how many church? I mean, how many HBCUs are started by the church? How many scholarship funds come through the church and so forth? Or the Black community more broadly.
The very idea of the university was created by the church.
Oh yeah,
right?
If you want to go, yeah. I'm with you. Yeah.
So
yeah. So I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, so when he makes this kind of sweeping statement, he talks about people saying that you're white. I mean, yeah, I had kids, tell me, oh, you think or you talk white, or you think you're white, or if you achieve this or that and third. But I think sometimes people overplay that, man. I mean, that's not everybody. I mean, usually it's the kids who ain't doing good in school that make statements like that. These are people that's already not doing well.
Also, and I said this before, he's not aware of the group of people that he's talking to in that building.
Yeah.
There's some incredibly well-read people in that building. And a few of them got at him at the Q&A.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, and on top of that, I mean, I just happen to know, I mean, from talking to Mason, I've heard out of his own mouth. I'm saying they have a significant number of millennials who are well-educated. You know what I'm saying? Doing very well professionally. You know what I'm saying? Male and female. You know what I'm saying? It's a very well-educated group. You know what I'm saying?
And he's not aware, like there's certain the condescent, he's very condescending at times. And it's like, bro, this is not your regular, this is not your TBN name it and claim it type of
No.
Not that. And I felt like he came in thinking that that's his audience. I'm like, bro, that's not what it is, bro.
Right. Well, and see, that's the thing is that I think that there, and it's not just him. I think a lot of these kinds of community dudes come to all Christians with the same set of assumptions.
That's true.
You know what I mean? And you have to understand that, at least in some circles, you're dealing with a new type of Christian here. I don't even want you to use the word new, just a different type than maybe they're accustomed to. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're not just gonna, you can't get us with the okie doke, bottom line, But last thing I'm saying about it is that I think, and now, granted, I'm just talking off the top of my head, but if I'm not mistaken, I want to say that Black women are among the most, in terms of those who are graduating with graduate degrees, as a matter of fact, master's. Yeah. I want to say that Black women are now among kind of like that highest group. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's, I know this idea gets thrown around about, Black people, and it kind of anti-intellectualism. We heard that recently, but it's just I think it's an outdated, and actually I wouldn't use the word outdated. It's just misplaced. I'm saying I don't think it's representative of the African American community as a whole. Pockets of it, sure. I'm saying you got knuckleheads in every community, but I think he takes that small thing and generalizes it to the whole, and that was just a mistake on his part. He shouldn't have done that. All right,
and then it's worldview for worldview, right?
Yeah.
So who got to go schools in ancient Kemet again? Who went?
Yeah, the elite, is my understanding.
It was the scribal class, and who else? And right, that's it.
Sure. Yeah, and
there was no public schools in ancient. Right? There wasn't no PS 29 in the Temple of Karnak. You know what I mean? Like, no, there wasn't.
Right.
There wasn't.
It was no.
You know what I mean? It wasn't.
Right.
There was no PS. No, in the southern part of the no. Nah. They reserved all the knowledge. They kept it. They didn't want nobody else in the country to know what they knew.
It's true. Talk about
control. I mean? So,
yeah.
You want to talk about illiteracy? Only the scribal class could read those hieroglyphics.
That's true.
Right?
That's true.
You know what I mean?
Hey, more bars, unintentional bars coming out.
Hashtag unintentional bars.
Hashtag unintentional. Y'all, is my screen still good?
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
All right, here we go.
King Amenemhat III. Say Amenemhat III. By the way, he's always depicted with very large locks. Always. We should be clear who this is. And during his reign, he brings forward one of the most powerful and early mathematic papyruses. Today, it's usually called the Rhind Mathematic Papyrus. Say Rhind Mathematic Papyrus. I'm not telling you that because you need to know who Rhind is. Usually these names are just given to the Europeans who purchased the thing and probably couldn't even read it. But you're going to have to do research. That's why I'm telling you this.
Let me pause that right quick. I'm actually looking for a book. Trying to see if it's right over here on my shelf or not. I got a book by a guy named James Nichols. James Nichols. I'm trying to see if I can just bring it up here. I don't see it right in front of me. But anyway, I want to say his name is James Nichols. And he does like kind of this history of maths type of a thing. He's got a book on that. And he gives like a Christian perspective on mathematics, which is pretty interesting. You know what I'm saying? But one thing that he talks about is actually not just exclusive to him, but actually, shoot, I mean, I'm not trying to cite Netflix, but if people want to see a history of math, they can look on Netflix. There's a whole history. I think it's pretty dope. And actually, in one of the episodes, they talk about Egypt. So I think it's pretty cool. But one thing that they cite is that in Egyptian mathematics, they didn't employ a concept of zero.
It was base 60, right?
Was that?
Was it base 60 they use? Or, no, that's
back in maybe the base 60.
I think use base 60. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, okay. So they didn't. So the Egyptians didn't. If my understanding, they didn't employ a concept of zero. I'm saying in their mathematics. Now, I just said that just kind of harken back to a previous point that he made about us. We got Christianity, from the white man, the oppressor. Mathematics in terms of the current math that we use and navigate our economic system with. You know what I'm saying? That concept of zero. I'm saying that base 10 system, I'm saying you need to reject that too. So I'm just throwing that out there. That genetic fallacy keeps on coming back, in different ways. You know what I'm saying? So you can go ahead and take it.
Yeah, you're funny.
I just want to throw that in there. I'm saying you can't even do math out here, B. I'm saying in the Western world, if you adhere to his worldview or his perspective here. All right, here we go.
If you thought of math this way, listen to what the person who wrote it, his name is Ames, by the way, and I'm going to look at Ames, a member of my shrine over there. This is what Ames says about what the text is. He says, it's an accurate reckoning for inquiring into things and a knowledge of all things, mysteries, all secrets. If you told kids in a third grade class that you were going to teach them how to understand all secrets before they learned an African form of mathematics, they would be more interested. We have to tell these stories. And then I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because I did earlier. We gave the world spirituality. If we recognize that the forms that are most prevalent today are nothing but copies, poor copies of that which you hewn in Africa, then we would actually approach this from a different perspective. And so I would say to you, family.
Yeah, so let me pause there right quick. So he says that we gave the world spirituality. Okay. Now, again, I think he's been slippery in terms of how he used that term we. I'm saying, because it seems to me that there at times he's saying we in reference to something that was specific to Kemet. And then sometimes he's saying we in reference to the more broader sense of just African and general. Right. Okay. Now, if he's using the term we there in terms of we gave the world spirituality, if he's referring to Kemet specifically, then you'd be hard pressed to demonstrate that nobody was practicing spirituality before Kemet. Clearly, that's not the case. I'm saying because you have even he would admit that the folks of Kemet would flow from Southern Africa. You know what I'm saying? Africa. And those people certainly had some form of spirituality, right? That maybe in his words flowered in Kemet. You know what I'm saying? So it can't possibly be true that nobody was practicing spirituality before Kemet. You know what I'm saying? If he's talking about Kemet specifically. Secondly, I want to say like you got like Sumerian texts, for example. And then you got to deal with Sumer. Then they had their belief system. You know what I'm saying? Now, we're going to argue about who had the first writing, but I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong, I'm willing to be corrected on that. I believe that the earliest writings we have come from Sumer, if I'm not mistaken. You know what I'm saying? And by writings, I mean...
Not by much, about a good 200 years prior to Egypt.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. but they're still describing they've got a spiritual system. They got something, and you would be hard pressed to say, okay, well, this group of people for whom we have record of their of spirituality in writing, you know what I'm saying, that they got it from Kemet. I mean, I don't even know how you could even demonstrate that. You know what I'm saying? I don't even know how you would go about it. You know, you just have to speculate. So my whole point is, at best, we could say that if you're talking about Kemet specifically, you can't claim that Kemet gave spirituality to the world. I'm saying at best you can just say that, you know, it's ancient. I'm saying it maybe, but I don't even think you can say that with any confidence. So that's if he's talking about Kemet specifically. And if he's talking about Africa, in the broader sense, then his claim becomes, you know, we use the term trivial. You know what I'm saying? It's so I guess blanket, or it basically it has no weight to it because it you know, it loses meaning. So here's what I mean by that. Let me be specific. So if he's talking about Africa as a whole, well, I mean, as far as I understand, the evidence demonstrates that the earliest people, you know what I'm saying, or the earliest archaeological find of where Homo erectus was Africa. You know what I'm saying? Africans were the first folks. I mean, there's nothing controversial about that. There's nothing, you know, conscious community-ish about that. That's just, as far as I'm saying, that's the earliest finding. I'm saying is that Homo erectus was found in Africa first. Right. As far as we know. Now, if that's the case, then everybody's African. You know what I'm saying? At least in origin, right? It becomes meaningless to say, well, we gave, you know, spirituality to the world. But if Homo erectus is the beginning of us all, then everybody, regardless of where they're at now, you know what I'm saying, they trace back to, you know, somewhere in Africa. So then the claim becomes trivial. It's not really telling us very much, you know what I'm saying? And it's certainly not giving any credence to the worldview itself. I'm saying, from which, you know, everybody else supposedly received, you know, spirituality. So it's just one of those things where I think that sometimes folks make claims, and by folks I mean people like Jabari, or I'm not just gonna pin it on him, but people make claims that have like maybe some emotional weight to it or rhetorical weight, right? But when you really break it down, like, you know, in terms of the content of what they're actually saying, you're actually not really saying a whole lot, or are just erroneous. You know,
well, interesting, right? In the same breath that he says, "We gave you spirituality," the next breath he'll say, "But that spirituality is all mythology, so it's not really real."
Yeah.
So you gave us myths. You gave us fakes. Like, right. That's a good thing. You gave us some really great wives' tales. Yay. Like, how's that a good thing?
Right.
You know? So which one is it? Is it really spirituality, or is it just some cool stories that we can kick it by the campfire? I mean, you know, it's.
I mean, right. I mean, and then on top of that, I mean, the Christian worldview can account for the fact that no matter where you go in the world, you know, the further back you go in different people's histories, you're going to find elements of different worldviews that accurately describe reality. I'm saying, so there are things about, I don't have to disagree with everybody of every worldview on everything.
Right.
And why? Because from one man, God made all nations, and he positioned them in different places, different times, that they might grasp after him and hopefully find him. Romans 1, you have, you know, man, we're all made in God's image, you know what I'm saying? And we've got this imprint, you know what I'm saying, of that imago Dei, you know, that I talked about earlier, and we've gone astray. You know what I'm saying? Like, so, you know, and aside from that, there are certain things that are just common to the human experience. We're designed a certain way, the world is designed a certain way. And so people from different vantage points are going to be picking up on some things that are true. So that's why, you know, I don't have to disagree with everybody.
There are some universal truths. There's
absolutely
universal truths. Yeah.
Absolutely. The issue is that with Christianity, you know what I'm saying, is that it takes all those universal truths, right? And in our brokenness and our sinfulness, you know, we have this inability to apprehend the fullness of those truths. So God provides special revelation through his word, and ultimately through Jesus Christ, who reveals God to the world, you know what I'm saying, in himself, and then gives access to the Most High through himself. You know what I'm saying? That's what we're talking about.
In real time. History. Not long ago in a galaxy far, far away. Like, this actually happened. This revelation happened within human history. Right. So.
And actually, for people who, you know, I actually have a video on my YouTube page, you know, where I go into the historical evidence for the resurrection. Like, we're not just blowing smoke. Like, I mean, you know, whether you're a Christian or not, I'm saying, watching this, like there are points of data, historical data, I'm saying, revolving around the resurrection that by which someone could rationally infer that Jesus in real time rose from the grave.
Right.
This is not just spooky.
Circumstantial evidence. There's
circumstantial
evidence, yes.
Right. Man, we balling tonight, man. This is good. All right, cool. Whew.
The important thing that we can do is actually to understand who we are. Maybe you thought I was going to give you a long treatise on how we're going to build Black economics. We have Black economics. Maybe you thought I was going to tell you about how you were going to save Black relationships. Well, in actuality, we have plenty of Black relationships, but we need to have proper models for how they should occur. And if we had proper models for how they should occur, we would actually save them. And I want you to understand that the other traditions have problems with women. They have problems with women. If that is what you're doing and saying, how can you actually decide how to have a wonderfully balanced relationship? A relationship based on what we would call ma'at. This queen here is my equal. She's my equal. If you follow an ancient guide for how relationships should occur, the issues we have with the relationships, the issues we have with abortion, this brother mentioned, would literally vanish. The problem is that our families have been rendered asunder. They were destroyed by a cruel process, by a cruel subjugator. And that subjugator actually has to recognize that when we understand who we are, there's no way they can step and stand in our way.
I'm with you. All right.
But according to his worldview, subjugation in itself isn't problematic. You're upset with who got subjugated.
Right.
But you're not mad at subjugation itself, right? So
just who took the L, right?
Right. That's all you care about, right?
Right. Well, actually, I was going to pause there anyway, because he said something interesting. He said that the most important thing we can do is to understand who we are. And that just so perfectly captures what's so wrong with, these worldviews that we deal with all the time. It's so man-centered, it's not even funny. You know what I'm saying? No, it's not the case that the most important thing we can do is understand who we are. I'm saying, if God exists, and I can give arguments, as to why I think that he does, why I affirm that he does, rather, then the most important thing we can do is to understand, is to get to know him. And in doing so, he can guide us in who we are and how he created us to be, you know what I'm saying? And then we can function, more effectively in his world, in the world that God created. You see what I'm saying? That's the whole point, man. Like these cats, they keep going back to, it's all about the I. The most important thing we can do is know who we are. Really?
But even with that, right? It's only the good things about me. That's what I need to focus on. So what about the bad things? What about your flaws? What about your weaknesses? You know what I mean?
Let's talk about that for a second. Let's talk about that for a second.
We don't address that?
Right.
Because that's what they mean when they say you need to know who you are. They're talking about what makes you great. Right. The things that you perceive to be great. But what about the things that aren't that great about you? The inconsistencies, the flaws in your character. Is that part of knowing who you are? I don't think that's what they mean when they say that. The whole not yourself thing.
No, I mean, and the question is, in terms of who we are, we're a mixed bag, ain't we? You know what I'm saying? It's a whole lot of
I'm a wretch. I'm a wretch. I need help. I'm a wretch.
The heart of man is desperately weak. Let's make it more concrete. I don't even want to be abstract. When it comes to the Kemetic tradition, who we are, right? If that's who we are, right? The Kemetic tradition produced a series of myths that describe the contentions between Seth and Horus.
Oh boy, this guy. Really?
I mean, that's who we are, though, right? But now, in the contentions of Seth and Horus, it describes occasions where Seth is trying to rape or rapes Horus, where Horus concedes to sexual activities with Seth. You know what I'm saying? And to bargain, you know what I mean, and things of that nature. I'm saying where I want to say it was where Seth places like semen. He poisons Horus with semen.
Yeah.
Right. That's who we are. We were talking about Kemet. That's who we are, right? We are the people that produce that tradition. Those are our deities who engage in that kind of behavior.
Or the counting of severed penises that's on the walls. That's also who they are.
That's who they are, right? That's who they are.
I didn't know we were going to go this far.
Or in one creation myth where the deity masturbates, I'm saying, to create the universe.
Right.
This homoerotica stuff, you know what I'm saying, and amongst their deities. That's who we are, right?
That's high science, brother. That's metaphysics.
I know you, man. I know you're mimicking right there. I'm gonna leave his name out of it for now. You said, but that's what I'm saying. Like, man, fam, like I said it earlier. All cultures, all people groups have skeletons in the closet. We not dope like that, bro. Like, let me rephrase that. We're dope in terms of who God made us to be,
right?
And we are dope in the sense that we are made in God's image, and there's more than enough in that to build one's esteem on, to be made in God's image.
That's it.
If that don't, you know what I'm saying, secure you, then I don't know what will. You know what I'm saying, but when it comes to of our own devices, I mean, just look at our own personal lives, man. We not flawless, man. We all got stuff. We all got
right? Because if you are the Immortal Day, right, you did nothing to achieve that. So you can't pat yourself on the back by being an imager of God because you did nothing to earn that.
Right.
So in a man's mind, there's no value because I gotta prove that I'm special.
Right.
It's not enough that the specialness has been given to me. I gotta prove it to everybody. Right?
Exactly. And actually, I was gonna stop and deal with the men and women being equal. I had some slides on that, but I think that comes up in the Q&A. So I'm gonna leave that for there. It was keep on. Probably had to wrap it up here in a second, but getting kind of out there. All right. Let me see. Am I still sharing my screen?
Yes, you are.
Oh, okay, cool. All right. I think we're towards the end of his speech anyway. So here we go.
Now, understand something very interesting. Africans today are actually situated all over the world. Do you know that there are more than 1 billion Africans on the planet? We talk about the number of people of Chinese descent. We talk about the number of Indians. By the way, India is about to pass China in terms of population. But we never talk about the number of Africans. Most Indians are in India. Most Chinese are in China. Africans are all over the world. You can see that as a problem. Or like the veritable pieces of a SAR, you can see that as our unity allowing us to resurrect ourselves. I'm not saying you got to move to Ghana, but be powerful and work with those Ghanaians in New York. That's what they need you to do, by the way. They don't need you taking up space and where we gonna sleep. That's not what they need. They need for us to strategize around the world. We are situated in key places around the world. If we had knowledge of who we were, there would be no problem that would actually befall us. And so this is what we must do. We have to have a corrective understanding of what it is to be African. There's no problem that is more present to people of African descent. There is no problem that has been more difficult for people of African descent. I know I have not had the opportunity to see the psychologist after my enslavement. Have you? Did they send them into the plantation and say, look, we know it's been really rough. We want to talk to you about how you feel and what you think about it. That didn't happen. We just been going along, continuing to live broken lives. Now, some of us have actually gotten it together. That's wonderful because Africans are people that cannot be held down. But in 2019, we have to go further. I'm going to say to you, family, that I was raised a Christian in a Black church. It was Roman Catholic, but it was Black. There wasn't nobody else there. And when I go back to see my family who attends, those people still love me. Those people still are able to talk to me about the story of morality and how to move forward as a man. But I am going to say to you, as long as they are ensconced in that tradition, they won't find guides that will help them understand how we have to move together as a community. You know, when I talk about African, thank you.
All right.
So he says he was raised in the Catholic Church, right?
All right.
And in that church, what did they teach him? The story of morality and how to move as a man, right?
Yeah, and he said they can still talk to him about it. Yeah.
But then he says, but for us to move forward, they need guides for morality. But I'm like, but you just said they were your guides.
Right. Right. He said, he said they won't find guides for however to move forward. But like you said, he just said that they've got these, they can still talk about, these.
They showed him the story of morality.
And apparently they still love him. He just said.
Right. So I don't know. Like that, I find that weird.
Yeah, it's a little weird. That's a little weird.
But anyway, continue.
Oh shoot, I'm pushing the wrong button. I'm the wrong screen rather.
Yeah.
And that's why it's of critical importance for us to go back and fetch it. Go back and understand who we are and where we've been. At the top of the world. If I had more time, I'd talk to you about how Kemetic spirituality, in many ways, is just African spirituality. It didn't originate in Kemet. It came to its flower in Kemet, but it's not. These are African traditions that we can actually prove were in existence for over 40,000 years. We were doing these amazing things before we have record of other people. We don't know where they were or what they were doing. They don't know where they were and what we were doing. We gave these things to the world.
Well, you know what? I just thought about something. He just said, we don't know where they were or what they were doing. Okay, so if you don't know where they were or what they were doing, how do you make the claim that you gave them spirituality? Is it as if they weren't doing it already? Maybe they was already doing what you was doing. And they just did it some more. I'm saying like you don't know. You just said you don't know where they were.
Back to the whole universal truths, right?
Right.
So whose perspective are you going by you saying that who copied from who?
Right.
Because if you don't know who those people are, and then you meet these people and they're doing things that are similar, I guess if you have a certain amount of pride, you think, oh, you got that from us. But how could you if you didn't meet me until just now?
Right. Exactly.
Right. So how does that work?
So his whole claim, we gave spirituality to the world, whatever. You know what I'm saying?
A world that didn't know them.
They didn't know him.
A world that didn't know them.
So he can't say with any confidence that they gave spirituality to the world, because for all he knows, they might have been doing it already. He just said it.
Right.
Kills that point. All right. I feel like he daggered himself more in this round than any other round. I'm just like for real, I don't know what it is, man. He's just killing himself.
He already acquiesced around.
Yeah, right.
We continue to run from them. We're going to continue to spin in circles. That which we need is already amongst us. And so I want you to understand that there are Kemetic shrines popping up everywhere. Everywhere. In fact, in our small space, we stream live. And when we stream live, we have people from all over the world who are now saying, well, who is it that I am? And I have been honored to take 3,000 Africans to the continent. Honored to do that. Every year, my wife and I take groups to Kemet and to Ghana and to Ethiopia. Yes, Ethiopia. Because we have to understand what we did and what we're doing. We have to become a global people. I know that which was given to me as a Christian was the best that my parents could give me. But they didn't expect me just to do what they gave me. They expected me to do better with it. I know your parents believe that too. Sometimes when I'm talking about the Abrahamic traditions, people really become hurt and offended. And I know why. It's because you're thinking I'm speaking ill of those people who loved you, who brought you to those healing spaces. I get it. What I am saying is that we have to go further. We cannot remain there. They expected us to go further. And if you believe you are honoring your mothers and fathers by remaining there, what about those mothers and fathers who were killed when they were practicing African traditions? Have you forgotten their names? Or would you like to just say that they transitioned? Would you like to just say there was no force, they just became something else? When we do that, we do them a disservice. When we do that, we do ourselves a disservice. When we do that, we cannot go back and get what we need.
I'm gonna pause it right. Just make a real quick point right there. So he says that if we make claims like they transition or they just became something different, then we do a disservice, because it's like, if I'm understanding him correctly, it's like we're downplaying what he believes to be this, kind of bloody, imperial-like outbreaking of Christianity, amongst Africans. You know what I'm saying? That's how he's depicting it, how he has depicted it throughout the debate. But with that being said, I think actually the shoe is on the other foot. I think he's actually doing a disservice to our African ancestors by not giving them the benefit, you know what I'm saying, of having minds of their own, of having experiences and encounters with the Christian faith, with the Christian worldview, such that they could evaluate it and take it on by their own volition. So he's not allowing them that. And whether it be the ancient African in Ethiopia, Nubia, he talked about, or whether it, or if it be those who encountered Christianity, during the transatlantic slave trade. You know what I'm saying? He's not giving them the full due for their mental capacities to be able to discern between truth and falsehood, and of their own will, I'm saying, determine and say, hey, this is, regardless of who's doing what, I've identified something that is true. And I'm able to look beyond, the evil of whatever this person proclaiming Christianity is. I'm able to look beyond this person and see a truth beyond that transcends them.
Right.
Then he's not giving the African, whether it be the ancient African or the more modern African, as I said, here in the Western world, he's not giving them the benefit of their own mental faculties. You know what I'm saying? He's not giving them the benefit of the doubt. He's just saying that you guys were forced or you was duped. He's turning, all of those people, all of his ancestors who by their own will, chose Christianity, all of them, he's just casting aside and saying, no, I'm lumping all of you into two categories: victims and fools, victims and people who were duped. That's how
would that be a form of oppression in itself?
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. This sounds like self-hate to me. It sounds like self-hate to me. Because and I can deal with this later, but you got to understand that when we're talking about, this was one of my pet peeves. People don't give our African enslaved ancestors enough credit.
Right.
Then we're talking about a people group,
right,
who after the Civil War, you know what I'm saying, or upon the Civil War, I'll put it that way, like towards the end of slavery in the South, you're dealing with a group of people where there's maybe like 5% literacy amongst them. Okay. Within one generation, you know what I'm saying, they increased that to, I want to say it was like 70%, you know what I'm saying, amongst them became literate. Because you got missionaries from the north coming down, teaching, reading, and you got, they kind of read in different ways. Some of them were self-taught. You know what I'm saying? They had the capacity to come off the plantation, you know what I'm saying, and engage in various forms of self-directed education, you know what I'm saying, and engage in whatever resources they could. And within a generation, you know what I'm saying, went from about, I want to say approximately 5% illiteracy, you know what I'm saying, to there being 70% of them who were able to read, 70% literate. That is not a group of people who is so mentally impoverished and duped that they're unable to make decisions about what is real in the world, and to assess information that's being placed before them. You know what I'm saying, and I think we just do a disservice to our ancestors. You know what I'm saying, when we do like Jabari has done, and just lump everybody under the categories of either victim or fool, victim or somebody who was brainwashed and duped. I'm saying that doesn't account for the scores of African ancestors who, of their own will, volition, and reasoning faculties, identify the truth and accepted it.
Facts. I agree.
And so I'm imploring you, family, whether you are rocking with Kemet or something else, we have to study what we did in order to truly understand what we have to do. And I will say to you that no other people on the planet have had a richer, more prosperous history. I know it's hard to see that from the vantage point of 400 or 500 years of hell. I know it's hard to see that. But you have to understand that if we actually look at the long history that we have been here, there is no problem that is a problem. The very story of Astasar and Heru is a story about a broken family, about a woman raising a boy to a man without a man in the home. I know that that's not something we experience here, right? That's not happening in Philly, is it? These stories will be guides. And so please follow them and we will be strong again. Dua.
All right.
And I think we'll wrap it up here. This will be a good place to stop. So
yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Now, I just want to say, to his point. Now, again, I just want to kind of end out with this. So one thing he says all the time is that when it comes to the Kemetic texts and the things that are recorded, those things are myths. They're not to be taken literally, right? And he will argue. I've seen him argue this with Hebrew Israelites, that he says in some way myth is more true than history, in the sense that myth is always true, you know what I'm saying, versus history has to do with something that happened at a particular time in the past. Mm-hmm. He renders it that way pretty often. Now, so with that being said, in terms of, so understanding how he's talking about the broken family of Isis, Osiris, and Horus, or as he would probably say, Set, Asar, and Heru. You know what I'm saying? He's saying, okay, well, here's a picture of a broken family. These are guides. You know what I'm saying? We can there's some application today, right? Now, I just want to point out that just because a story has a beneficial application, that is not a statement about whether or not the story is either true or points to a worldview that accurately describes the world more broadly. So, for example, I could talk about a couple of years ago in the Super Bowl. I don't even like the Patriots, you know what I'm saying? But, you have Tom Brady who was down against Atlanta, you know what I'm saying? And, the whole squad was down. They was getting killed in the first half. I could tell. I mean, I'm sure mad pastors preached on that that following Sunday. But, you know what I'm saying? But anyway, Tom Brady, they're down on the scoreboard, and third, fourth quarter, they march down the field, up and down the field, man. They score several times, come back, and they end up winning the Super Bowl. I could tell that story, and then I could give you a beneficial application in terms of the importance of not giving up. Right. You know what I'm saying? And persevering, working as a team. There's a whole bunch of life lessons that I could get out from that. You know what I'm saying? But just because I've told you that story, that doesn't mean that the story itself is indicative of some broader worldview that is true about the world and accurately describes reality as it is. It just means I've told you a story from which you can, gain some beneficial lessons from. You see what I'm saying? And so when he makes statements like that, okay, cool. I'm glad, we can get some positive themes out of these myths. But I would go back to my question is, in terms of Kemeticism itself, you're supposed to be defending Kemeticism. Who has the answers, Kemet or Christianity? Right. You need more than stories. You're going to need more than a series of stories that illustrate a positive point or meaning. You know what I'm saying? My question would be is, unless you can demonstrate that Kemeticism is true, right? Unless you can provide evidence that Kemeticism is true to back up the metaphysical aspects of it, the worldview as a whole, the moral scheme, and that this or that proves it. You know what I'm saying? Then again, you just got a bunch of stories that are maybe they're pretty cool to read, but you haven't done anything to demonstrate the veracity of your worldview. as opposed to the Christian worldview, where we can give you the ontological argument, we can give you the contingency argument, the argument for morality, we can give you the historical evidence for the resurrection, we can give you the argument for mathematics in terms of how abstract objects like numbers and sets apply to the real world in an uncanny way that can be accounted for by a metaphysical cause that has a mind and can volitionally, bring that about. We can go into all that. We can go into all that. And like I said, and with the resurrection, bring you right smack dab to the central claim of Christianity, by which you tie all those other arguments together, you know what I'm saying, and say, boom, Christianity is true. Can you do that, Kemet?
Right.
But
even if you, let's go with both Christianity and Kemet, it's just a matter of a collection of stories, right? What has your stories created, as opposed to our quote unquote stories? Because I just did a whole litany of what institutions were created by Christian stories.
Right.
What benefit has the world received from applications of the contentions of Horus and Seth? If we're just going by story, they said everybody we're fictional, you're fictional. Fine. Whose fiction helped? Whose fiction really helped?
Or we could take it a different direction. So your stories, upon your stories, the ancient Egyptians built an empire. Okay. Well, let's say Christianity, if Christianity is false, then upon our stories, Europeans built an empire. Okay, so we got two empires now. so my question is, so aren't we on equal footing then? I'm saying, how is your worldview any better than Christianity? If both of them it's all about stories and myths and universal lessons. Okay, cool. We got two different empires here. All right. Now what? It's just a matter of which stories you want to choose. So again, you haven't advanced the cause of Kemeticism by reducing both worldviews or either of them down to just myths and then leaving it at that. If you haven't produced any evidence and you're just going to go the mythical route, all right, cool. Well, at very least, we can say, all right, you and the white oppressors are on equal footing. Both of y'all built empires that took advantage of other groups, took their land, or imposed themselves in some way that other groups did not desire them to. Both empires did that. All right, now what?
Facts.
So,
Facts.
Yeah, man. It's
listen, man. It's 1:30 a.m.
Yes, it is.
Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah.
When can we? Well, next time we'll be on your channel, and what I guess we could talk about exactly. I mean, we gotta. I guess we'll deal with Bantu's round on your channel. Is that what you'd like to do?
Yeah, we're gonna work. Yeah, we can work our way through Bantu's round, and then I guess after that we'll do another. I guess it'll end up being our final segment. Will be after that, which would be
Q&A.
Q&A. Mm-hmm.
Sounds good. When do you think we can do that?
I'm thinking. What's today? Wednesday.
Because Friday is my wedding anniversary, so I will not be on this.
So Friday is a go.
Okay, funny guy. Yeah.
Like we can do Monday or Tuesday. I mean,
right.
Because Thursday bad too, right? So
next week I'm off. I'm on vacation for the whole week, so it's whatever.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. Well, let me confirm with the wife as to what will be best. But I'm thinking it'll probably be Monday or Tuesday. But it won't be a long turnaround. You know what I'm saying? We can get back at it.
Sounds good. So you hear that, people? So next time you'll see us, we'll be on True ID sometime next week with the deep dive into Bantu's round. Right? So you get the last word, Mr. Coleman.
Yeah, man. Just once again, man, enjoying it. Appreciate you being on your channel. For folks who may not be familiar with me, check me out at here on YouTube at True ID Apologetics. That's TRUID Apologetics. Check me out at trueidapologetics.com. TrueIDpodcast.com. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, the whole nine. Love y'all, man. You know what I'm saying? And definitely been enjoying this, man. It's I don't know what it is, man. Actually, a lot of this stuff that we talked about tonight was unexpected, man. I don't know why I just chalk it up to the Holy Spirit, man. Just God, God doing His thing. That bottom line. So I'll take that back. I do know why. You know what I'm saying, we got God's wisdom, flowing, and just identifying a lot of daggers, self daggers, that Jabari inflicted upon himself in this round that I didn't even catch, honestly, until we were doing this.
A lot of Harry carries.
A lot of it. yeah, a lot of it, bro.
Right.
So, man, enjoy it, man. But y'all know what it is, man. At the end of the day, love God, love people, and take care of the things that God blesses you with, man.
Yes, sir. And this has been the BK Apologist. We will catch you on the flip side. Peace.